Muted now. Okay.
No, the phone is your microphone, basically.
Yeah, I'm just trying to see on here. So you can hear me now. I'll just use the microphone or the mute on my phone here.
Sounds good.
What are you doing, Kurt?
I'm documenting for posterity.
Oh my gosh. Well, it might be good to be muted and then unmute when you want to talk. Okay. But we'll get started. We'll call this meeting to order. The meeting of the City Council workshop meeting will be held online and broadcasted in Washington City's YouTube channel at washingtoncity.org/meetings at 4:30 p.m. For this and future public hearings, we would encourage the public to monitor the agendas on the city's website, as we will only be taking public comments in this manner. No verbal public comments will be taken. If you have questions or comments about any of our processes and procedures, you can contact our city recorder, Denise Bullock. We thank you for your patience. And as we all figure out how to operate in this new world, we're committed to keeping the business of our city up and going and running. We remind everyone that all planning, zoning, and building services are functioning. We're processing those requests as quickly as possible. So now I'll entertain a motion to approve our workshop of an electronic meeting, April 8th, 2020. Looks like there's 5 items.
So made, Councilman Clough.
Seconded by Councilman Coates.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. I'd like to, Terrell Clove, are you on yet? Out of respect to his time, I was going to have him move up to number 2 instead of 3, but
Mayor, he's on the phone. Sorry, it took me a second to find all the mute buttons required to get him connected, but he's here now.
Yes, I'm here.
Terrell, thank you for joining us. We appreciate your time. You know what, Council, let's go back and approve the agenda. We'll move item 3 to item 2.
Mayor, with that being said, I motion that we move item 3 to item 2 as the agenda is listed so far.
Mayor, I'll second that.
Okay, motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you. Okay, I've asked Mayor Clove to come and be on. We appreciate it. Maybe this will bring a little nostalgic back to you, Terrell, but we really appreciate you taking the time. We'd like to have you give us some history about this bronze statue that you had initiated originally, and what your thought processes were, and what you would like our council to consider.
Yes, I will. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me to participate for a few minutes. This project actually started about 15 years ago when we were getting close to the sesquicentennial celebration of our city. And we talked about doing a monument out in the roundabout, which at that time was there wasn't really much out there, to commemorate the settlement of our city and to honor the pioneers that came here and began this, journey that we all enjoy today down here. And so Jerry Anderson was the artist that we had talked with. He did all the other statues that are here in town. And I've talked with him since, and he's willing to do the project. And so I'll just kind of tell you about what the envision is. It would be a statue, not a statue. It would be actually I think you've got a rendering of it there in your packet. But it'll be about a 15% larger than life, the people and the wagon and everything, but it'll be out there. So when you come into the city, which I think Washington Parkway actually is the grand entrance to Washington. It's kind of in the middle of the city limits there where you come into town. It's kind of virgin territory out there. So now's the time to make a statement with what we're going to do out there. So it would be a project that would take him about 2 years to complete, 1.5 to 2 years. And it would be a total cost. And I just talked to Jerry now. So the first, anyway, the price you've got here on this item is 450,000. So it's actually more than that because the foundry costs have gone up a lot. Because when we were going to do the project the first time, it was 300,000 to do the whole thing, and his labor and all that hasn't gone up. It's just the foundry costs have gone up a lot. So it'll probably, he's thinking, I talked to him originally, it would be about 800,000. But when I talked to him today, he said he's found another foundry and it will be less than that. It might be as low as 600,000 to do the whole project. And so he would need some money up front to buy the clay. Then he has to pay half of the cost when he sends his artwork to this foundry. And then when it's done, we have to pay the balance. And I think it's a worthy project because, like I said, it's going to be out there where it'll be seen from everywhere because it's an elevated area out there. It'll show up as you come down or up I-15 and even come up the parkway, you'll see it. And it'll be lit. It'll just be a magnificent statement. And I think we were the first city that actually started with any kind of artwork like that when I guess it was the Historical Society that did the Women's Monument at the Relief Society building. And I don't think any other cities had any kind of statuary, but others have followed suit since we put some up. But this would be almost one of a kind. It would be several people and animals, plus the wagon with a lot of the artifacts like that they would be bringing with them, buckets and beds, and that would be in the wagon. I just think it would make a statement that says, we're Washington City. And then especially out there, because that's where the pioneers came in, right there where Grapevine Pass is. And the man out in front, I don't think you can see it on that rendering, but he's actually pointing to Washington, saying, that is going to be our new home down there when they get down here. And I know there's lots of other things that need to be addressed as far as there's never enough money to do what we need to do. But this, like I said, is a monument that symbolizes our city. And we already have a registered trademark that we went through the process to get the Cotton Bowl, which symbolizes the cotton, is why they even came here in the first place. It would represent the arrival of the first settlers in 1857. And then the parkway, like I said, it's a grand entrance, and that would be an elevated area where I think it would just be beautiful out there. And I know there's always going to be controversy. I mean, I know you're thinking about that. There's always going to be controversy no matter what you decide to do on any project. And just a couple of examples of things that happened in our city that we had. Some had horrible, lots and lots of controversy, and some just had, some controversy. But the city hall, the community center, the water wheel sign down at the Nyson Park. Nyson Park itself was very controversial because I remember when the city bought that with money we got from property that Roy Nyson's family gave us in the field. There were people that lived right up there, and I'm not kidding. They called me and said, if we see one more of those old trees go down, we're going to come after you. And I said, well, they have to come down to, put the whole vision together. And so that was controversial. The trails were controversial when they started them. When we put the public safety department in place, very controversial. And even the zoning, when we started the actual zoning ordinances and put them in place, there was tons of controversy about that. But all I can say is even the parkway itself was controversial, actually, because when it was, and F.A. Laczkowski gets a ton of credit for even the reason that's there. Some of the council thought we should just put a 2-lane oiled road up to there and then let the developers put the rest of it in when they developed. But the majority stuck together and said, no, we're going to do what's going to be the vision of the future. And all these things I've mentioned to you already, aren't we glad we did them and not just listen to the naysayers? And, you might get some slack on this one, but I'm just saying down the road, you'll cross your heart and salute as you go by and say, I'm so glad we did that. It's going to make a difference for the rest of, it'll stay out there as long as I guess the earth stays in place. That's pretty much all I have to say, only I hope you'll consider it. It isn't a funding thing you're going to have to put all out right now because, like I said, Jerry, it's going to take him 1.5 to 2 years to do it. So that's my spiel. I just hope that you'll consider it.
Thank you very much. Councilman Clough, did you have a question for?
I like the rendering. I appreciate you, Mayor Clove, for being with us. It's always good to hear you. Can you give me an
Thank you.
idea of the footprint of this particular statue? What's its dimensions? What kind of area they're at?
I don't know. I know that they're all, like I said, I call it it's about 15% bigger. So the people are going to be like 6'6". The people, I don't know exactly the length of the dimension, but we left a place when we did the roundabout. If you go out there and look, you can see where it's supposed to see it, because they kind of planted out around. It's kind of there at the top of the elevation of the roundabout. So I don't think it would disturb much, if anything, of what is already there. It would just enhance what's already there. And I just think it would be absolutely wonderful to do this.
So help me understand it. So basically, if you left the Washington City where Dixie begins, has a little cotton ball trademark, to basically take off the top of that landscape and put in this statuary in that place, is that what you're saying?
I don't think they take the top off. I think, and Roger might know more because I think they're on the kind of the east side, the west side of that roundabout hill, I call it. There's kind of an area right up there where it would be kind of like they were walking down over the hill to get into Washington. It's not just going to be up there flat. It's going to kind of have some dimension coming down through there. So I don't think they would, because I talked to Jerry about it too. And when we put the roundabout in, we kind of left that there with the idea that this was on hold. And when we got to that point, there'd be kind of a place to put it. So I don't think it would disturb much, and it wouldn't take the top of the hill off. I don't think that wasn't the plan.
And then my final question is, you brought out a timeline, knowing that there's going to be a lot of things, step-by-steps on this. The overall thing, I kind of got this could be anywhere from 2 to 3 to maybe even longer years from this to start to finish. Does that seem about right?
It won't be more than 2 years. He told me it would take him about 1.5 years to do the whole thing. So if, like, for example, if we said right now tonight, we want to do it, we'll give you the money tomorrow to start it, I think he would have it done 1.5 years from now. But he said it might be a couple of years by the time they get their approvals and everything placed. It won't be more than 2. So we would pay for it this year, half of it, I guess, and half of it next year. And it would be completed, I'd say, 1.5 years from now. So maybe Cotton Days, and I'm just using it out of my own mind, Cotton Days of 2022, maybe. I don't know. We need to kind of maybe make it around one of the holidays that we celebrate. I don't know if we could have it done by Cotton Days next year, but he might could.
Okay. So anywhere from 2021 to 2022, if we decided to go forward, that could be a possibility.
Yes. Yes, and I think it would definitely be before 2022 when we had to pay for it and when it was in, if we started it right now, because he said it would take 1.5 years to do it.
Thank you.
And
Mayor
when
Clove.
he's doing it, it'd be interesting if you guys, once he starts it, it's really interesting to go up there to his studio in Silver Reef, because you can go right back there. He's got a studio there on the north side of his house. You can go in and just see what he's doing. When he did the other statues, I went in and saw the framework and then the clay work, and it's very interesting and intriguing to see all that going on.
All right. I have no further questions. Thank you, Mayor Clove.
Thank you. Councilman
Thank
Coates.
you.
Yeah, so kind of the questions that I have is, that's a big sticker number, $450,000 to $800,000 on a statue, and I agree that these are great things to have. One of the questions I have is, have we thought about doing, instead of a statue, more of like a cutout? I don't know if you've ever seen down by Desert Canyons, they have kind of those cutouts of mules or something like that, that maybe those are more and can look more affordable and look the same, that we're kind of aspect looking on that area. I don't know if you've looked into anything like that. That's just one thing that came to my mind that I've seen that I like. I'm not saying it's as nice, but it might be more affordable and accomplish the same
Right.
goal. So those are
No,
just some of my
we've
thoughts.
looked at Jerry. Well, I know that's why I say I know it's a lot of money. There's no question about it. And Jerry said he's going to, be as fair as he can with this. And that's why when he talked to me today, he said, I found another foundry and it probably won't be more than 600,000 if we do the full wagon. He did come up with another concept, and I don't know if Roger has it there or not, but we'd have to pay for having a fake rock built like they did in Ivans on the roundabout. And then the wagon would be coming out of the rock, and it would just be the front half of the wagon. So all we really would be eliminating would be the back end of the wagon, and it didn't save that much. It was probably 100, maybe 150,000 less, and you'd have to have it. It wouldn't be as visible because you don't be able to see it when you came from the one direction.
That makes sense.
But anything you guys might come up with, but whatever.
And one thing I look at it is as far as the cost goes, those other projects you mentioned are all great projects. I like all of them. And looking at it is that they're a usable project. I mean, I know some of them are a lot more money than others. You can get on it, you can play on it, you can walk on it. And this is more of a visual, which I'm not opposed to. I'm just saying it's a big sticker for sticker price.
No, it's a big sticker.
visual.
That's why I say I understand.
Yeah.
No, I understand totally. If you don't do it, you guys are the ones that make the decision, but you'll do the right thing that is the best for the majority. Like I said, there's always going to be a minority of people that aren't going to want something or never use it. I mean, there's people probably that never use the trails, but we put them in because there's people who do like them. So
yes, and I agree
it just
with you
makes
there.
a statement.
Totally agree.
And, art's a part of, and art I think is very important to a city. And I say all the other cities around here, not all of them, but a lot of them have already taken this to heart and they put in some artwork around it. I think it's made a big difference.
Oh, and I really do like the art that's been put around in areas we've seen. So
Yes.
those are just some of my
I know
initial
you-
thoughts. So just wanted to bring those up for everyone to discuss.
No,
as
I
well.
understand. They're kind of my thoughts too. So I have the same thoughts.
So, but that's all the questions I have, Mayor. So
Thanks, Councilman. Yeah,
Okay.
Councilman Bucky, another question?
Yes, Mayor Clove, one question I have is on the other projects that you referenced, how did the community participate in funding those particular statues?
Well, the statues in town, I think they all were funded just through the city.
So
I know
the
Roger might know it. He
Relief
was
Society
here.
building and everything was done by.
No, the Relief Society building and the statue down there was all done by the Historical Society and private donations. I don't think the city, as far as I know, I don't think the city contributed much, if anything, to that one. The veteran statue that we did, so the Monument Plaza there at the museum, that was funded through the city. The veteran statue, at that point, the council decided they didn't want to fund any more things like that at that point in time. And so Jerry, I can't remember, he bought back, or he took John D. Lee. We didn't have John D. Lee's statue actually at that point. He took him back, and somehow he traded the veteran statue for the John D. Lee statue. I think that's how he took it back. He gave us the vet, and so that's how we got the veteran statue. But like I said, nowadays everybody thinks how wonderful we've got that there. I think it is a huge addition. So most of the funding I think came through city funds, unless there were some private donations. I don't remember.
Okay, thank you. Those were my concerns. Thank you.
Carol, remind
You're
me
welcome.
again, the upfront for the clay, how much was that? What was that number?
He needed $5,000 upfront for the clay, and then he would need when he went on, after he got the things where he got them molded or created, then send them, he'd have to have half the money
Right.
at that point to send them to the foundry.
Okay. Thank you very much. Any
And
other additional questions or
You're
comments
welcome.
from Mayor Clove?
Do I have any, you say?
Yeah, absolutely. You have any
No, I
additional
don't have any
comments you want
questions.
to end on, Terrell?
No, I don't think of any unless you think I've left something out.
I think you're good.
I don't think I have. I think you've got the idea of what it's all about.
Thank you so much for your time. If there's no additional questions, we'll let you get back to your evening.
I will hang up and I will just talk to you whenever. It's been a
Okay.
pleasure. I think this is the first time I've ever been on this end of an agenda. I've always been on you guys' end of the agenda. So it's kind of a
Good to
different
have you.
feeling.
It was good to have you. Very good.
Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
Mayor.
I'll talk to you anytime. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, item 2, which is item 3, discussion of one-time funding priorities. Kimberly Roche.
Mayor and Council, thank you. And I'm going to share my screen so I can pull the information up in front while we're kind of going over it. But the purpose of tonight is to be able to talk about the one-time funds that we have. And the reason that we need to talk about them is because we do have a limitation that's placed on us with the state in regards to what we can actually retain on hand to be in compliance with that state law. And so I presented in your packets a spreadsheet that just listed the one-time funding items that we were aware of or had heard in discussions in regards of needs for the city, and what some of the estimated costs were associated with that. In reviewing of that, the items that were recommended were looked at in regards to, from my standpoint, I did look at things that seemed to fall in line with the current strategic plan that the city had. And then in regards to comments, I just noted other options that we might have available for additional funding sources so that you guys would be aware of that as well. So the total amount of estimated, well, the current reserves that we have right now that would have been as of June 30th, 2019 was about $6 million. And that equates to about 27% of our general fund. And so by the end of the fiscal year, when we do our budget opening in June, we need to have identified any locations that we would like to contribute for capital projects that we can include to transfer those funds in the year-end budget opening to get that fund balance below the state maximum. So that's basically the purpose and kind of the objective tonight, to be able to review and look at this information and to have you as a council prioritize these items here if you have anything additional.
Kimberly, I can't see your screen. Are you sharing with us?
Okay. Hold on, let's see. Let's see if it says it is. Sorry
Kimberly, it
about
says
that.
it's sharing on my end. It just doesn't show anything.
Okay.
It looks like you're
Just-
sharing a screen that's blank. Can you shift it from one monitor to the other?
Yeah. Because of the way it's showing, I apologize for that. Let's see if we can.
There we go.
Okay. So are you able to see it now still? Nope, it pauses it. Okay. Sorry.
Well, we had it up there for a minute and then
Okay.
you, there we go.
Okay, I apologize. Thank you for your patience. This is, I've got 2 monitors in order to be able to show things, and it appears that it has to be on a specific one in order for that display to work properly. So I do apologize for that. So if you can kind of clearly see now what those items are that we have listed, and then it's just basically to open it up for questions that the council has or a discussion in regards to the priorities that you might like to see.
Kimberly, if we can just point out that we've added one thing, I think only one thing, is that correct, since the packet?
Yes, so since the packet, we did add one item, and let's see if I can identify that.
Should be for
This item
15,000.
here is for the Aeroclave disinfectant tool. And the purpose of this is it's a tool that would allow us to be able to disinfect vehicles and things like that that might be contaminated during situations like we're having now with the coronavirus.
So that one just came to our attention from our public safety people, and we felt it was significant enough to add that one to. Chief Evans has done sufficient research into it to think that, and it's just not only vehicles, we could do equipment or office space or those type of things. So we apologize for adding that one, but we felt like it was worth bringing to you.
My, the pictures of all you have covered my hand waving ability to see who has their hand up. So if any of you have a question, just raise your hand, just so I can. Councilman Coates?
Yes, so kind of wanted to just give some experience on this. So we're recommending this amount. Now, does this fund just get transferred to a different location for future use, or is it got to be spent this year? What is kind of the goal
This
with
would
these
not be
funds?
funds that we would plan on spending this year. It would be funds that as part of the current year budget, you would allocate towards a project that could be spent in next year's budget or future budgets as needed. But we have to identify and assign it basically to a capital project or an equipment purchase before the end of this fiscal year.
So if we assign it to it, it has to go to that specific project, correct?
That is correct. It would take council action to unassign it.
Okay. So one of the things that I've been going through, and let's just start at the top of the pump track park. So it was requested $500,000. And I look at that and I kind of did some research and looked into what it cost St. George City to do their pump track. And they were $1.7 million for the first phase. And they have another $1 million slated over the next few years and that includes parking lot, restrooms, full site. And I know it's a very large park. I'm just concerned that we don't have enough money if we're going to do a pump track park, if we're going down that route, requested in the dollars. And I'm not saying 250 is not a bad start to start putting money toward it, but I'm just concerned we don't have enough money toward that pump track park to manage that. And the other thing I kind of talked to them about was what their maintenance costs are ongoing. And the maintenance costs currently right now, they have one full-time employee and 2 part-time employees that maintain just that park. So it's a big burden besides just the initial cost that we have to look into long-term if we're going to go down that route of a pump track park. And then I had a question about the dog park expansion as well. That's because this doesn't include the money we just spent to buy the property. Correct?
City Manager, did you want to respond to that portion of the?
Yeah, actually, let me point out a couple of things that might help. So Councilman Coach, you are correct. So let me point out real quick what we did, and I shared this with Councilman Ivy as well. So both the pump park, let me just identify these, the pump park, the Covington home, the Sit Dog Park expansion, the City Hall expansion, all those were, I mean, we've not dove into any of those numbers. So what we basically did is precisely what you said. So let's take the pump park, and this will pertain to all of them, is we just took and said, what could we start with? But we don't know what, we've not dove into it enough. I know Councilman Ivy's working on trying to bring some conceptual stuff back to the council. So you're correct on probably every one of those. They're just going to be kind of placeholders of potential money. And if they're too short, then yes, maybe they needed to be delayed because you couldn't get anything with it. But we just wanted to identify those. So some of these are still discussions to be had before the council. For instance, the Covington Home 2, we know we probably need to do something so that this doesn't weed over. But again, we don't know what the design is because we haven't come back to the council and got their input yet, but we plan on doing that. So I just wanted to point that out as part of that. And the dog park expansion, yes, is what we just looked at is kind of a placeholder. So these are just placeholders. Let me just say it that way.
Yeah, and they're placeholders, but we're moving funds to those projects right now, correct?
Yes, that's what our intention would be. That's our recommendation, is that monies begin to go there for that. And so whatever is decided upon as development, and it could be just that we move it there and it just sits there until additional money is moved there.
Yeah. So looking over these, and I know the pump track park might be combined. I'm just concerned that we are putting so much more money and not into a park into the fields. I know the pump track park was talked about being in the fields area potentially. I just want to make sure that we're getting, we've kind of envisioned incorporating a park and a pump track together. And I think that's a great idea. I just want to make sure we're putting money toward there and not putting money toward the dog park expansion right now if we don't need to, because I thought we just spent $300,000 on a dog park land, and maybe not this year. We're not putting another 150. We can move more money to a park that's needed out in the fields, is all my thought is.
Yes, and this is just, all we've done is to just begin the discussion, but you're precisely right. Now that's exactly the level of discussion we'll look for the council to have and then make their recommendations.
So is this the appropriate time? Because that's why I'm bringing it up.
That's the intention that we would like to have, is that the council begins this discussion tonight. Now, again, this won't be probably funded until our final budget opening of the year. And the reason for that is because that fund balance that you see at the top may change a little bit, especially in light of what is currently going on. So what we would do, though, is we would know where this any surplus funds would go in your order of priority for the final budget opening for the end of the year. So it wouldn't be funded right this moment, but we'd know your recommendations and be able to slot those towards those capital issues with the actual funding to occur at the end of the year.
Okay, and then I just have one final question, then I'll yield. When it says RAP tax eligible, are you saying that that you're taking it from RAP tax, or it's just a comment saying that we can go for RAP tax money as well on these?
Those comments are just indicating that these projects are eligible for RAP tax funding.
Okay. And then, sorry, Mayor, I have one more question. Is I don't see any streets on here at all. I'm just curious why we don't have any need for any streets I mean, we have some streets that need some funds to repairs or anything like that. I'm just wondering, for one time, if we have the funds in the fund balance, why don't we have some dire needs on some streets and not rely so much on federal money on all of our streets?
Mike Shaw, are you there?
Mayor, if I may,
Sure.
the reason that we didn't include any street projects on here is because of the number of resources that are currently available for us in regards to the roads in the 5-year plan that we have. We have the new sales tax that was initiated that just started this year that goes towards roads that will be contributed, that we estimate adding $250,000 to $400,000 a year towards roads right now. We have the highway tax money that we also receive, and Class C road funds, as well as impact fee funds. And so in regards to the funding sources that are available and the number of projects we have, from a priority standpoint, that was why we didn't have anything regarding streets that showed up on this particular list. But it is certainly up to the council's discretion if you choose to do otherwise.
And that's the questions I had. I just wanted to bring up those, and I'll yield back.
Thank you. Councilman Clough, you had a question?
All right, so one of my main questions on this is, Councilman Ward and I have discussed in previous things, I would be fine slotting money away for some of these things, but as a council member, we're doing some things that we'll discuss a lot with process, concepts of parks and everything. We have 2 parks slated on this list, the Pump Park, the dog park expansion. We are discussing the concept of a statue. We are discussing some expansions. I get concerned that a lot of times we set money aside and then have no idea of the renderings and stuff of what are going to happen until after it's just happening. I would like to have some sort of a constraint. I'm fine setting the money aside and having funding set aside for planning and for designs, but not to release the rest of the funds until those designs have been discussed by the council. Those are my main concerns.
So if I can touch on that, yeah, so we wouldn't do that. What we need though is we just need to, right this moment, we have just shy of $1 million that needs to be put in some capital, or at least at the moment. Now, again, it may not be that exact funding amount come the end of the year, but we're anticipating that we'll still have some fund balance that needs to be slotted somewhere, so that we're not out of compliance with the state fund balance requirement. And those can simply, they just kind of simply go into a capital facilities plan, but they're still earmarked. And again, the council has all sorts of discretion to still move those, but we just need to still have those approved by the council to move over to a capital facilities plan with at least an earmark to them. And again, that earmark doesn't mean any more than the council has looked at it. They put an earmark on it, but it can be moved later on. And it doesn't even have to be necessarily spent for that if the council so chooses and goes through the process. But all we're doing is saying we're anticipating potentially $1 million of extra funding that we need to put somewhere. We can't just leave it in the fund. And so I think we can meet all the concerns that you have, but would still probably need to get the council's kind of direction on where you would, what your priorities would be, and then we'll slot those over and kind of give those name tags, if you will.
So let me verify from what you said. One of the main concerns I have is I'm fine setting the money aside, and I get that we do need to follow our state statutes, set this money aside. But within the motion made upon these one-time studies, anything that has a rendering or a design or something that can be drawn and therefore brought back to the council should be brought back as funds are dispersed, because I think that's a vital part of what we do as a council, is to have a voice not only in the initial disbursement of money, but to have a say and an oversight on the actual edification of these funds, especially when you're building parks and stuff. I just would like to see more of this come back before the council rather than just be a postscript email of things that are happening. Just thought you want to know.
No, I agree with you, and all that will happen. All this is right now is just the council giving us direction on set aside of funds. It isn't touching upon the normal process we would do. And as a matter of fact, like I said, I know Councilman Ivey's trying to at least begin some conceptual discussion. We haven't talked to the council yet about what their thoughts are on the Covington home. We don't actually have a lot of thoughts yet on the Covington home, so on and so forth. And so this would not neither deny you of that opportunity, nor would we intend it to be a denial of that opportunity. It's just simply us being able to move some funds appropriately over to the capital budget, but with the rest of the process, of course, being maintained in its fullness.
Thank you, I'm done.
Sorry. Councilman Coats, I think, and then Kimberly, and then Councilman Staley.
I just have a quick question. Roger, are these funds, can we just put them in like areas like parks department or streets department? Do we have to assign an exact project? It's just, I'm not sure.
So I'm going to let Kimberly answer that. It's my understanding, though, that the state audit would like those to be at least identified and more than just generally, but let me have Kimberly speak to that specifically.
Yes, the state requirement for our capital projects requires the funds to be specifically designated towards a project. But at any time, the council could come back together. It just takes council action to move that money to a different project. Now, with what we're doing with these funds here, and when we talk about this excess fund balance and capital projects, This is different than approving necessarily the project as a whole, or again, the total cost of the project. What we're doing is approving funding to either save up towards something that you want to do in the future, or again, if we already know what it is and you want to get started, there's some equipment that we have needs for to buy or purchase. But like, for example, with the cemetery expansion, last year when we allocated excess one-time fund money, we contributed $150,000 to the capital projects leisure services for that cemetery expansion. And so it still needs, the 300,000 is basically the estimate that we're trying to save up to. And then once we have, you know, some funding, or we get closer to when we need it, then that would be when all of the finalized design and stuff would be done. But it still requires this item to be budgeted for in the budget before anything can be spent. So this process, there won't actually be a vote or anything that's taken on this. The discussion tonight is to determine what your guys' priorities are, and if there are specific dollar amounts that you do want to start slating towards any of these projects. Then in the year-end budget opening, we'll have a much better idea of what the fund balance availability actually is, and where we are at in regards to that 25% maximum. And in that budget opening, you're still not authorizing the expenditure, you're simply authorizing the general fund to transfer money to these capital project funds to start saving for them. And then it would be in a future budget, either next year or whenever it's ready, that as part of a budget process or a budget amendment, then those actual costs in terms of the final project would come forward, and the council would actually have to include that in the budget opening to spend and start spending any of that money, if that answers any of those questions.
It did, thank you, and I'm done.
Councilman Staley.
I really appreciate the discussion here this evening. This is certainly a good problem to have, excess fund balance. And like any home budget or city budget, there are a lot of very worthy projects that that we could put the money towards. Personal history looking back, I think if you just kind of spend the money and spread it out amongst so many different projects, it kind of dilutes the opportunity. And I think a lot of these things would get picked back up in the typical regular budget anyway. I would love to hear what the council, if the council had strong feelings on 1 or 2 or 3 projects, to where, you know, after this, you know, spending excess fund balance, we would have something to show for it afterwards. So I would be curious to hear, you know, what the council's priorities are, maybe, you know, top 2 or 3 projects, and then maybe we can make a bigger impact towards those.
Mayor, may I jump in there?
Yes.
I think that's a great point. In fact, that was going to lead up with my next question, is that maybe what we could do is put together some type of a prioritized list and kind of an idea of how much we would want to put towards each one of those items. I mean, obviously there's things here that we don't really have a lot of information on, like the driving range. I imagine that is an improvement, or to expand it, I don't know, but it's just that type information would be very valuable, so that I personally could make a prioritized list. Of course, I would like to have enough money that we do something substantial, unless that means that we wouldn't have enough for something else that would be needed. But if I may, I'd like to go back and talk just a little bit about the pump park and Councilman Coates. I would love to have a conversation with the entire council about what the ideas are for the pump park. I'm certainly not the what do I say, the person that's in charge of that. I just have been kind of heading it up. I'd love to hear everyone's input to kind of get an idea of what the monies would be, so that we can begin to work on that. But my comment is this: prioritize, and maybe get a little more information before we make a final decision. and kind of make a tally and see where we're at and then move forward from there. Thank you.
It looks like that we're getting positioned to be able to make those, that call, council. So look through that and see if, and I apologize, in a few minutes after this, if you wanted to talk more about that, what Mayor Clove was talking about, I apologize that I didn't give all of you a chance to visit about that. I just spaced it out, so we could talk about that too. And I see it's down there on item 19 down there, so.
Mayor, may I step in?
Sure.
Okay, so I appreciate that we're in this situation. I think Councilman Staley, you're right that not all councils have left us with such an insane, wonderful opportunity. This is, we're trying to get back down underneath our fund balance maximum. I see this also opens up conversation for us to do more in the future. I'm thinking that even if we do get the pump park all going, I do like the amount of money that's set aside right now in light of what Councilman Coates and Councilman Ivey have said. There's a lot that we're still designing and trying to do. I do anticipate us probably funding more of that based off the information that's been given. And so I think a lot of these things, anything that has a dollar recommendation with the request, I have no concerns. I feel like these things have been brought to us from our staff, from our city, saying that these are their top 22 things that are on their mind. I feel like the setting aside money for the celebrations is appropriate. I do like the idea of the infrastructure, specifically to our buildings and to some of our parks. I am really interested in understanding a little bit more about some of our things that are down the list, but I'm kind of deferring my thoughts on those to when we start to talk about funding those. Things that have a recommended dollar amount next to them, honestly, the vehicle graphics, the Christmas lighting, I can see our city hall needs some improvements with the HVAC. The only one that I'm just trying to understand a little bit better is the citywide time clock system. Can we get a little bit better explanation of what that is? Because that's a pretty significant dollar mark for some clocks.
Thank you. I think Councilman Staley, were you next? Were you?
No, Mayor, I'm listening. I'm still kind of
Okay.
thinking in terms of top 2 or 3 priority, because I think a lot of these things would handle themselves in the budget over time, but I'm trying to listen and get a good feel for the entire council.
Okay, thank you very much. Kimberly and then City Manager.
On our spreadsheet here that I have doing with you, I did add another column, and I don't know if it updates live for you to be able to see, but there were some items that I wanted to be able to point out and identified as operational needs. So we have projects that are listed here that are project based, and then we actually have operational needs that are for the city. And if we were to prioritize those, again, this is from my specific standpoint, but the disinfectant tool would be a top priority based on the scenario that we're currently in. And then the driving range. The driving range is an item for the golf course that is needed. And it's not something that we can cover with revenues from the golf course. It's something that we would need to identify one-time monies within the general fund to be able to get that project completed. And that we would like to be able to actually do in the next fiscal year. The citywide time clock system, that is actually a payroll item that would put all of the employees on a singular system for tracking employee time. Right now, there's various methods that are utilized to track employee time that have to be all put together to process payroll. And we believe that if we could implement a citywide time clock system, that it would create more efficiencies in terms of operating costs for the city, is fair, as well as making sure that time is applied equally to all employees. The vehicle graphics for the police vehicles and the handgun transition, those are also operational related items in terms of purchases that fall outside of what they're able to fund within their existing budgets.
Thank you. I think city manager. Then we'll,
I just wanted to point out,
Craig and then Chris.
I just wanted to point out a couple of notes that are on here that you may find helpful. So the single asterisk, of course, is a phased cost. So that, of course, obviously isn't. But I think what's great that Kimberly's put here is the double asterisk means that it relates to the strategic plan. Now, the specific project may be not listed in the strategic plan, but the expansion of parks out in the field, those things. And so if you see those double asterisks, what she's tried to do is identify things that have been identified in the strategic plan. That's our 5-year strategic plan. And then if those would relate to that in some form or another. I only point that out so that you know what that means.
Councilman Coates.
So can you explain what the project is at the driving range? I mean, I think I heard you talk about that we had a project there, but I didn't get what the project was for the driving range.
So they're looking at expanding that driving range and widening it. And so that they can accommodate more. It'll actually have a revenue component that is associated with it. I think we've seen that, but I don't have it right here. But so what they're doing is looking at expanding the stations. I'm probably not saying that right. The mayor will get on me, but expanding and widening. We have such high demand on our driving range, and we feel like we can fill it, and we feel like the room's there, space is there. Sorry.
Councilman Staley. Unmute. Thank you. Thank you.
I was saying, there's no doubt about it that these operational needs are very important. These are some of the basic functions of the city. I look at where we are in terms of this fiscal year budget. This budget started on July 1, 2019, and it ends on June 30, 2020, which is less than 2 months away. So my question for staff is, shouldn't a lot of more of these operational needs be included into the budget that is currently being prepared and going to be presented to us starting next week? Then the other thing that I would just throw out as a question is, I've heard from various council members the interest in a pump park. So I'm wondering from the council if that is a top priority, and if so, how much of a priority in terms of dollars?
Mayor, may I go? I don't know how you guys are indicating that you're talking.
Down in participants.
Okay.
You can hit participants and then it says, it's a blue hand you touch.
It says raise hand.
It says raise hand.
Okay.
There we go.
Okay. Great. I got my hand up now. Thank you.
Go ahead, Kurt.
Of course, my priority is the pump park, and I want to see something substantial done with the money that we have, of course. So to answer your question, Councilman Staley, that's my priority, and I think we need to put enough into it that it solidifies that for us. I feel it's a priority, but I just want to make another comment now that my hand is up. When I look at the City Hall HVAC, recommended is $40,000. I'm assuming that's probably needs to be updated, probably new condensers and equipment. But if I'm just wondering if something like that could be incorporated into, and I don't know the time frame of the City Hall expansion, but you would want to be careful not to do that then if it could wait until we do the expansion, because I'm sure that a lot of that HVAC would need to be redone and new vents and stuff drawn or ran when we do that. So just a thought.
Yeah, so let me answer that. Absolutely. If we anticipated that within a period of time, we would expand City Hall, then no, we would not recommend that in the event that we wouldn't want to consider that for some period of time. And I'll tell you why that's such a low number is really all we're looking at is some individual HVAC, individual units for our 3 big areas, our council chambers, our lobby, and our courtroom. And then what that'll do is take the pressure off the rest of the system for all the rest of the offices. So in the event that we don't expand City Hall within, and this is not next year, we don't need to expand City Hall. We just to put it down there as just it's a thing coming. But even if that's going to happen within a reasonable period of time, let's say 5 years, I'm not sure that we can't live on the HVAC. But if it was taken off the list, we'd like to address that down the road. To answer Councilman Staley's question, yeah, we'll try to squeeze what we can in the operational budgets. Many of these have been tried to be squeezed in the operational. I don't even know if I said that right. Squeezed into the operational budget in times past, but as we've held tight on those, they've just been kind of these unique items that we just decided that that they may be better suited to at least have a discussion on a one-time funding. But whenever we can, we will try to squeeze those into an operational budget, or when I say operational budget, into an annual budget. Let me say it that way, into an annual budget if we can.
Kimberly, I see your hands up.
Thank you, Mayor. I also just wanted to add a little clarification when we use the term one-time funding and what that means and how it correlates to the budget process in general. So when we prepare a budget, a lot of times when we look at the revenue, there are certain revenue resources that are considered one-time revenues that you don't want to spend on ongoing operational costs because that's not ongoing money that we are going to be receiving. It would be money that, again, that we consider might be one time. So an example of that might be if our average, growth rate for Washington City was holding at 5%, and all of a sudden, as we were looking at this year and we were coming in at 7 and we had a surplus of this money that was coming in because of that growth, that is not money that we want to consider for ongoing operational costs because we don't anticipate to receive that excess revenue ongoing. So when items like that are identified that we receive, interest earnings, are a classic example of one-time monies that we receive or miscellaneous type revenues. It's things that are coming in at that point and they can't be slated towards operational. And so when I talk to you about this one-time funding, and the reason that you see these operational items that are in there is because they're a priority for the operation of the city that can't be funded with ongoing revenues. This is money that has to be saved up with or come from money that goes outside of the day in and day out work that needs to be done within the city. So the only way to fund these is through these one-time monies. And if they become a priority for you, then in the next budget opening, so either at the year-end budget opening or anytime during the year that there's a budget opening, that's when we actually can spend the money. Or if you show that it's a priority, then you'll see these come forward in the 2021 budget proposal that we're preparing. So we have to get it out in front of you to know as a council what your priorities are as well in regards to one-time funding. And this is just part of that process.
Thank you. I think it was Councilman Coates, then Councilman Moore.
Just kind of going off what Councilman Staley asked and just kind of giving my opinion, looking at the list that's presented from us. I don't have I look at this and see these smallers, these 10s and 15s and 20s down at the bottom. I see these as things that we can take care of. I don't know if we need more Christmas decorations. I don't know if that's a necessity, but I don't know the status. I'd have to ask Roger on that one. Same with the HVAC, just explain that. I would like to see more money into a park. I'm not saying the pump park. I'm just saying a park in the fields is pretty important. And I look at the driving range as not that critical because it is already there. And then I don't know the expansion of the cemetery. It seems like we are in need of more room. So I think that's an important one. And the Covington home is important too, because we did just get that property next to it. And it would be nice to get something down on that one. As far as the dog park goes, I think we just invested in it by getting the land. I don't think that's a critical one in my mind. So those are kind of my thoughts. I just want to get that out to the council.
Thank you. Councilman Ward.
Thank you, Mayor. So just questioning here, and I'll need some help from staff on policy here, but in the last few weeks, I've been thinking to myself that I was really grateful that the city had a surplus. And I'm pondering what would be the process even to possibly even ask our legislators to ask for a variance to actually hold on to this and postpone this until we actually get a sense of what kind of world we actually live in. The other question I'd put to staff is, do we have a sense of the kind of economic reversal that we're expecting to see from the current worldwide crisis?
So Mayor, if I can answer a couple of those is, we've been working and we've constantly discussed with our legislative body raising the 25%. And by the way, it was 15% not that many years ago. So they raised it. I think the counties are currently at 50%. They've been unwilling to do that at this point. But let me add a little comfort to that though. And also we've got a state auditor that's pretty strict on statutory requirements. So unless the governor would issue something executively, or if the legislature in one of their special sessions between now and then would do something, and we can certainly ask that question. I think our goal would be compliance with the state statute, because I think we'll get tagged pretty hard if we don't. But to add some comfort to that, we've had the finance department look to see what 25% means for us from an operational level, and it puts some good grain and some good cows in the silo to cover us for some time. And so that's the first part. So, and the second part is, yes, we are working diligently because we've got another budget discussion that's going to happen next week in next year's budget. So we're squeezing every department we can right now, from the State Tax Commission to the Governor's Office of Planning and Budget to the Utah Government Finance Officers and the Utah City Manager's Office, to see what anybody is coming up with as it relates to some theory as to what this impact will be. And at the moment, we're not got anything. So, but we are anticipating that what we had anticipated as growth numbers, growth revenues for the upcoming year, that's why we're recarving the budget, because we don't see that happening. So we're going to come with a very conservative budget, but we don't have anything solid yet from all these groups to help us know what that is yet. But we're still going to be showing you next week some pretty conservative numbers for next year. And that's why this number may change too. That's why it could be 966 now, but when we get to the final budget opening at the end of the year, it could be 500 that we're saying is available.
Thank
Mayor,
you.
can I keep going?
Absolutely, yes.
So I'm just wondering, I know that we've asked our state legislators, but if there was ever a reason to expand that grace period, it seems like we've got the reason built in now. I'm wondering if we can maybe ponder about ways to put maybe our League of Cities and Towns and some of our other contacts with our state legislators to work and see if we can get that adjusted. I just have a sense that if they've not been willing to hear that in the past, that right now they might be willing to allow for cities to retain a little bit more money, even if they attach some guidelines to that.
Anything else, Councilman Ward? Kurt, Councilman Ivey, did you have another comment?
Yes, please. Councilman Ward, I have the latest information from the league on this, which is entitled COVID-19 impacts for municipalities. It's anticipated the state will get $1.25 billion, and that will be disseminated throughout the state. And I think they're very aware. They've actually made a list of additional expenses related to COVID-19, and they're trying to work that money fairly throughout the state. And I think a lot of those deficiencies will be addressed by this. Of course, not all. I do agree that we need to proceed carefully and where it's tumultuous times, but the league is on that, and Councilman Ward, I will forward you a copy of that for your own records. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Ward, you still back on another comment?
Sorry, Mayor, my
No,
screen
no
went to
worries.
sleep and I couldn't unmute myself very fast. No, I'm just really nervous right now with such unknown quantities. The economy, we have the potential of a number of, we have the potential of a number of our citizens having problems with paying for their utility bills and other things. I just get kind of nervous talking about things that could be put off. And I realize we could put money towards these and then reverse ourselves. I'm just kind of nervous. But frankly, I would like to see that number raised, and I think this is a good opportunity to go raise it. I'd like to get us working with our league officials and others to take another look at this. That's all I have. Thank you, Mayor.
Let's go Councilman Staley, and Councilman Clough, and then City Manager.
You know, the other thing, if we're talking about, you know, saving money or having a problem of having excess surplus, maybe we need to talk with, you know, our state legislatures about lowering taxes. If that's the conversation, I know that a municipality exists because the state of Utah says we can exist, and they allow us at the local level to oversee and administer a budget for the benefit of our community. So, you know, I don't know if the legislature is going to allow us to keep 27% or 30% rather than the 25% fund balance. I certainly understand where Councilman Ward is coming from as far as we don't know what sales tax is going to do. Are they going to reduce? Are we going to have, you know, operational shortages because of, you know, sales tax revenue that doesn't come? I kind of tend to think we're going to bounce back from this. I think we're in pretty good financial position. Just to give you a little bit of a point where I am, I really like the police and public safety expenditures. I added those up to about 85,000. To me, those are important. I think it makes sense to keep our HVAC working in City Hall. That 40,000 is important. I appreciated a little bit of here's priorities on the high side, and here are some things that I didn't like from I like the way that Councilman Coates prioritized, and I found that I tended to agree with him, and I also appreciated what former Mayor Terrell Clove presented, and I would tend to put the statue toward the top of that list too. So as I see those coming about, I see a pump park to have some general consensus. I see certainly a cemetery as a need. I see the bronze statues being something that will help that area become a economic hub and draw people there. The Covington home, I'm probably more in the middle because that's just talking about putting road base on a vacant lot. I think we can do some other things to keep the weeds away for 150,000. And I agree that the driving range and dog park would be lower on my priority list. So generally speaking, I'm feeling in line with Councilman Coates, other than I like the idea of allocating some dollars to the bronze project.
Thank you. Councilman Clough. Excuse me.
One of my main concerns, I really appreciate all that's been said. This has really made me see this from many points of view. Where I'm leaning more towards having these prioritizations put into place, as Councilman Coates and Councilman Staley have stated. Where I am most concerned, really weighs heavy on my mind at this moment, is input given by Councilman Ward. I really think we've put ourselves in a unique position to be where we are. And I think that we are in a very unique position to really verify some needs that exist. Now, I know that we have some constraints, as City Manager Carter has brought up, but I would feel much more confident if we could do a follow-up conversation with those powers that manage what we can do with this money and how much we can have on hand in light of the COVID. Simply because there are a lot of unforeseens that are not on this list, both how they impact our community, how they impact our city function, that we're just barely getting before us. And so there's a part of me that really sides with Councilman Ward in saying, I'm not opposed to moving forward on this, but I would like to verify if there's a way that we can use this money to address the current issue, which is our number one, is how our city is functioning with COVID-19. All these things right now, I think, don't beat that issue. So I know it's not quite apples to apples, and I'm being very honest in that. I guess with what City Manager Roger Carter has said, we could dedicate this money and say, okay, it's going this way right now. But I feel like there is a very huge possibility that when they come back and say, well, we thought it was going to be $966,000, now it's $40,000, more than likely probably $500,000. I don't think that if we put anything above $500,000 towards anything at this point, that it would really be accurate because of the huge impact that COVID's had on us. I just think there's a lot of heavy things happening that are not being accounted in these numbers. That's my concern.
Thank you, City Manager.
We don't know what we'll anticipate for the remainder of the year because all of our revenue collections are lagging. So more than likely, I mean, we're collecting stuff. I mean, we're just receiving stuff that we collected this last fall, and that'll continue. So the reality is that the impact of the recent pandemic will actually be more of an impact upon our next year than it will be this year. And I only share that just so that you know that we'll probably see, I mean, we'll maybe have to come down, but I don't think we're going to come down leaps and bounds because we're just collecting money that's already been collected and just in the process of passing through. I'm good with, I'm good with a full court press. And years ago, actually, we tried to squirrel away a little bit more than 25%. I think we got away with it a little bit better than I believe we are going to get away with it now. I'm happy. What we would like to see from the council is that you, and it doesn't have to be done tonight, and it probably won't be. So I think what we're looking to see is exactly what you've all done tonight. Great discussion and very well thought out. And so then come back to us. We'll do a full court press with the legislature on an increase and see if that is within the realm of possibility with the legislature or the governor. But I would suggest still that you look at how you would like to allocate these funds. And in the event that we get that increase, that then, you know, we can just say all bets are off. We can just set it aside as a fund balance. But in the event that we don't, I would encourage you to keep working on what your priority list for an allocation is, because I really don't think we're going to come down a ton because, again, we're already dealing with funds that are already collected just on their way to us. Might be a little bit at the end. But also, we really would not recommend, and I don't think we legally can recommend, outside of a change in the law, for the city council to break the law and keep more than 25%. And so if you'll keep working on the allocation, we'll work on the other stuff because I like that idea.
Thank you. Let's see, Councilman Coast and Councilman Morgan.
So just a clarification from what you just said, Roger. So do we want to just put together our wish list and email it to you, or what? I mean, how do you want to see this, or do you want us to address it a different way? I'm just kind of wondering the process you would like us to address this in.
Well, we can do it kind of any way. If you want to do it that way, then what we'll do is kind of, again, cobble it together, get it back to you again, so that you all get to see it and then say, this is what we like. That'll work. We can do some of the legwork on that. It sounds like that there already was some meeting of the minds on some area, and so that's a good discussion. So we can do it that way if you want.
Okay, I think that works for me. I'd like to just rearrange them in my order that I like, and then issue it out to staff to review and look at it and combine with other people's comments.
Council okay with that? Councilman Ward, did you not want to?
My hand was raised from earlier. It didn't come down. I'm good, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, all right, thank you. Councilman Clough?
So as to my understanding, our way of moving forward on this is as a council, we're just going to take this information, give our opinion and come back as a council and vote on this later. Is that correct?
That was suggested.
I really appreciate the wisdom in putting that forward because I feel like this information has been brought for the council to kind of talk about. We got some feedback from our city manager and from Kimberly Roosh. If that is not a burden, would it be possible for us to, as a council, table this? Well, I don't know if this really necessarily needs to be tabled, but if we could give enough time necessary for us to come up with our top 10s, discuss it, and then push it forward, where would that be, City Manager Roger Carter?
Well, yeah, absolutely. You've accomplished exactly what we wanted to have accomplished tonight, and that is get familiar with what we've thrown up, talk amongst yourself, and now if you can just kind of, if we can start to funnel that down, then if we can get your stuff, we'll put it together in some sort of a workable sheet, get it back out to you, and put this on the work session for the next meeting as well.
Thank you. Councilman Ivy?
$8,000 with a priority kind of in an amount and in a prioritized form. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other discussion on this? Okay, we'll move on to the last one. Again, I apologize about the bronze statue. Let's think about that, and I'll put it on the workshop again, and then we can discuss next workshop and give you an opportunity to all of you to have the opportunity to have your input. I would appreciate that. We'll move on to item 4, discussion of redundant public hearings. You know, I suspended the last one. So give the staff and the council a chance to figure out where we want to go with it. If we haven't decided one way or the other as a council, if you want to make a change on that, it would take, if I recall from Manager Carter, about a month and a half to make that change. The staff has felt that they've worked out the kinks in that. And if you want to stay comfortable with what we're doing, that's up to council. So questions, comments on that? Totally confuse you? Craig, looks like you have a question.
Yeah, so you're talking about the 2-week holdover, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, or any of the, what we're talking about specifically is more the redundant. So we have, what the mayor suspended is that we heard the particular issue at the planning commission level, and we had 2 or 3 of them that went to the city council, same issue. That was the redundant ones. So you remember we had discussion on both those issues. We had a discussion on both the 2-week holdover and does the city council need to rehear things of the planning commission. The only thing that the mayor had kind of suspended, I guess he did suspend both, but what he did suspend particularly is because we didn't have the burden of public hearings was a problem at the moment. So it was just 1 week that we didn't hear the ones that were already heard in the planning commission. But what I requested, since the mayor suspended that, we always like to get that back to the legislative body as quickly as possible anytime there's a suspension for emergency. And so what all I said to the mayor is, we feel comfortable with the public hearing process now. It's not perfect, but we think we're comfortable enough that we can resume those again, the redundant public hearings, unless the council has come to a decision, and then we would begin revising the code for the redundant hearings. But that takes about a month and a half when you figure we got to go through 2 public hearings in it.
So on the public hearings, I know we don't have to have them. I don't mind hearing them in council as a secondary hearing because we might not hear everything that was said in planning. I mean, we go through the minutes. And so I don't mind how our current process is on the public hearings. A thing I want to get away from is any public hearings that aren't necessary after it's been preliminary platted. Because we don't want to, because after the preliminary plat, they're very, the developer or whoever's developing the land is invested rights. And so I hate to have a false pretense from the public thinking that they can change all this stuff when really it's already, once it's pre-platted, that's when the biggest invested rights is until the final plat, which is the biggest. So that's my only concern there. And then I don't know if I need to go in again on the 2-week holdover. I don't think it's necessary, but I also thought we were going to leave it for 6 months and relook at it. But
Yeah,
that's
that
where
was not as much, that one wasn't as much a discussion this evening as just the redundant ones.
Okay.
Thank you. Let's go with Councilman Ivey and Councilman Clough.
Again, I don't want to repeat what Councilman Coates said, other than that I thought that we were on a 6-month hold and kind of see how it was going to go. I believe Councilman Ward suggested that, and I felt really good about that to kind of get our feet on the ground and kind of see how it was going. So I don't mind hearing the public hearings, but I do think that we need to stay the course the way I thought that we had discussed it with the 6-month waiting period. Thank you.
Okay. Councilman Clough.
You know, this is interesting to consider it as a redundancy, because though the redundancy is the fact that there is 2 public meetings, I really feel that these public meetings that we're doing as a council, we have all these different committees that we splinter off into as a council, but nothing impacts us more per average on our agenda items as land use. And so I really feel that we need this redundancy at times, well, at this time, because there is so much that needs to be considered and discussed at a council resident level. I understand the needs of the developer, and I think it's some valid points you brought, Councilman Coates. But I think the primary issue that I think needs to be protected by keeping both of these in place is that it allows the council and the community to interact with the intentions of the developer, and at a level which all the council can equally understand the concepts, have time to digest it, and then therefore be able to take that information and make better decisions. Whether that is, hopefully our decisions are based off of a joint understanding that these developers and community members will work together with whatever development goes in. But I just feel strongly that this really isn't redundant. I think that it is imperative for us as a council to have a forum where all of us understand both the public and the developer needs in a very, it's kind of in still of a draft phase when it comes to us, to where things can change, move, and be discussed before intentions of development have priority. I think the councilmen need that priority to discuss and understand the concept with the community before we feel good moving forward with the development that's proposed. So my feeling is, I do like going with the 6 months, but to add with the 6 months, my overall feeling is the council needs this redundancy to give us a fair understanding of the community and developer needs when these come up. That's my feeling.
Thank you. Councilman Staley, and then we'll end with City Manager Roger. We need to get ready for our city council meetings.
Mayor, am I understanding correctly that the holdover and the redundancy, these are 2 separate issues? The holdover is saying we have a public hearing and then we wait 2 weeks until we vote on it. Whereas redundancy in public hearings, I guess I'm curious to know what meeting, in particular would you say, are we having a public hearing at the planning commission level that would be redundant at the council level? And are those some that we could eliminate? That would be the question I have for you and for staff, Mayor.
It's a good question. I believe you're correct in that statement. Can I verify that with the manager?
Yeah, so those are 2 separate things. And primarily the purpose here was to indicate, one of the reasons we just suspended what I'm calling the redundant hearings is because we didn't want to, until we figured out the public hearing process, create a compulsion for the public to meet. But I think we got that worked out. So that's the first thing that wanted to be explained. Since the mayor executed his emergency powers, we wanted to explain that. We're good with the 6 months too, by the way, as well. But I believe there are 2 or 3 land use processes, and I don't think any of them are beyond, I don't think anything, we're holding any public hearings beyond preliminary plat unless they're conditional uses or other things. But I do believe we have 2 or 3 that get heard in both categories, and I'll have Drew, I'll get it from Drew and I'll send them out to you on what those are.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Stady, you still have the hand up. Did you want to?
No, I didn't mean to leave it up. I'm still getting used to this.
No worries.
But I like the idea of getting a list of what those specific public hearings are. So I'm happy with that.
We'll get that out to you, out to the council. So thank you very much. I don't want us to feel rushed, but it's about 6. I hope this was good, you know, for our first round. I think it was great. So let's take a 2-minute break and then we'll come back on and stay on, but we'll take a 2-minute break and we'll come back into our council meeting. Everybody back? Everybody back? I don't see Councilman Clough and Councilman Coates.
I'm here.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Like you do,
Okay.
and who's present, that kind of,
I need to do that.
like we do when you go into closed session. and stuff.
Okay, I need to do that for this.
So it'll
okay.
show up on the,
For everybody on this list,
do the council.
just the council.
Hey, Mayor and Council, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hey, I sent you a chat on the two primary land use issues that we have redundancy on over the years that we've placed redundancy on in the chat, if you'll take a look at it.
Okay. Councilman Stark, we're just getting started with the regular council meeting, so
Yeah, so just look at it whenever you want to, guys.
thank you. Thank you. Okay. We call this meeting to order. It's a meeting of the regular council meeting. It's held online and broadcasted in Washington City's YouTube channel, washingtoncity.org/meetings. On the agenda are two public hearings scheduled this evening. The city has been open and receiving public comment for these public hearings since last Friday, April 3rd. Your public comments or concerns for these items can be made through the posted agenda for the link for items available for public comment at washingtoncity.org/meetings. Comments will be taken until the city council closes each public hearing. For this and future public hearings, we would encourage the public to monitor the agendas on the city's website, as we will only be taking public comments in this matter. No verbal public comments will be taken. Once tonight's public hearings are closed, the city court recorder will read all the comments into the public record. If you have any questions or comment of any of our processes and procedures, you can contact our city recorder, Denise Bullock. Again, we thank you for your patience as we figure out how to operate in this new world that we're going and the things that we are going through. We are committed of keeping the business of Washington City going each and every day. We remind everyone that planning and zoning and building services are functioning, and we are processing those requests as quickly as possible. Thank you very much. I welcome you to our Washington City Council public notice of an electronic meeting. It is April 8th, 2020. We started at 6:04. Those in attendance are our city council members, Daniel Clough, Cress Staley, Kurt Ivey, Douglas Ward, and Craig Coates, with our staff also that are attending, and I will have the recorder make the note of the staff that has attended in this public meeting. I have asked Councilman Dan Clough if he will offer an invocation, and if Councilman Craig Coates will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Our dear Father in heaven, we're so grateful for the opportunity which we have to come together and discuss the needs of Washington City. At this time where our city, our nation, our world is grappling with the issue of COVID-19, we pray that we will be able to do those things which are safe and secure at this time on behalf of our citizens, on behalf of those who are visiting and those who are establishing their lives with us in their businesses. We pray for special guidance upon our staff, upon our public servants and those who keep us safe, and upon every resident, that we may act and behave in a way which supports liberty and supports process and supports safety. Help us to do those things which would bring us peace, to be mindful of those things that would bring us harm, and always aware of those things that could bring more joy and security and prosperity in our community. At this time, when we discuss these items before us, we pray that we will do those things with courtesy, respect, and with a deep commitment to live within the ordinances and the restraints which we have as city council members, that we respect the Constitution of the great state of Utah and the great state of our great country. We're so grateful for this opportunity and pray for thy mercy upon us. May thy will be done. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
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 Please rise and repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the
flag
flag
flag of the
United
United
States of
States
America
of America
and to the
and to
republic
the
The
republic
for which it stands,
one nation,
one nation,
one nation, under
under
God,
God,
under God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
liberty and justice
and
for all.
justice for all.
Thank you very much. Okay, well, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda for this evening.
So moved, Mayor.
second,
I have a motion and who seconded the motion?
Clough, second.
Councilman Clough seconded. All in favor,
Hey,
say
Mayor,
aye.
I have a quick question, Mayor, sorry.
Okay,
On the agenda, the one that we're talking about, item 5A,
mhm.
are we just gonna address that notification during that time?
When we get to 5A, yes, sir. Thank
Okay,
you.
then I don't have any comment. Thank you.
All in favor, say aye, or thumbs up.
Aye.
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 Thank you very much. Item 2, announcements. Anything to announce? I do have one announcement, if I may. On April 24th, Washington City Council and the Washington City Mayor are going to be proud to host a drive-in movie. I believe that's a Friday night. We start at 8 o'clock. And the site will be the Washington City Community Center. So, and more information will be made available through social media and on the radio. So it'll be a lot of fun. That's all I have. Anything on item 3, declaration of abstentions and conflicts?
Mayor,
Yes, Councilman Staley. Is that Councilman Staley?
Yes, Mayor. My wife and I, we own a property in close proximity to item 5A. So I will be abstaining from any discussion or future vote on that particular zone change request.
So noted. Thank you very much.
Mayor, this is a Councilman Coates. Item 9C, the award for the Washington Dam Outfall and East Lift Station. My company I work for worked on that project, and so I'll be abstaining from that vote.
So noted. Thank you very much. Okay. Any others?
I just had a quick question for you, Mayor, and I just appreciate it. Just a quick training. We all have various facets of our life outside of what we do as a council. What can you remind me? What would be the main things that we should declare for our abstentions and conflicts? Is there anything in particular we should be aware of?
Well, like for example, with Councilman Coates, you know, his company was involved directly in that project. Councilman Staley, he has property next to the development. If you had an ownership or a partnership in something that could, you could potentially have an influence in or on for the positive, you know, those are the things that you should consider abstaining from.
All right, thank you. Just a clarification. I appreciate that.
Okay, any other items to declare or abstain from? Okay, move on to item 4, consent agenda. Item A, to approve the minutes from the city council meetings of 3/11/2020 and 3/30/2020. Item B, consideration to approve the board audit report for March 2020. Item C, final plat, consideration to approve the final plat for Commerce Hospitality Center located at approximately 954 Commerce Boulevard, applicant Dean Terry. Consideration to approve the final plat for the Prada Hasina Phase 2 located approximately 500 North, 100 East, applicant Craig Engel. I believe that's it. I'll entertain a motion.
Mayor, I'll make a motion. We approve. the
I have a
consent
few
agenda.
questions, if you
Oh.
don't mind, sorry. I tried
Nope,
to.
you're
No.
good.
Go ahead, Councilman.
If you don't mind, I have 4 questions on the board audit.
Okay,
Nothing crazy, but just, I feel it's our duty to look over the expenditures. on what would be page 7, date March 15th, it looks like we paid for flights for the New Scale trip. I'm just wondering if we were able to get a refund on those fares, or if they will allow us to fly at a future date with the cost. And I also kind of thought that UAMPS was paying for that.
We were paying for the flights, but I'm going to have Rick Hansen answer your question because he's the one that booked it and has been working with Delta on the change.
Okay, Mayor and Council, where that currently sits is they rescheduled that meeting for May 28th and 29th. It's yet to be seen if that's gonna, materialize, but I was able to move all the flights to that. And the city covers the flight costs and UAMPS takes care of the motel and food and that kind of stuff. So right now we're scheduled for May 28th and 29th, contingent on, what happens with the virus.
Great. Thank you, Rick.
And that was at no cost to change.
Great. The next question would be on page 8, March 18th of 20. The payee was Two Wheel Industries. It was in the police section. It seems to me that a recent board audit, I saw 1 or 2 other mountain bikes being purchased. How many total are we buying? And is this a second or a third or what?
On that expenditure, if I can talk, this is Chief Williams. That was actually donated. We got a donation from a charitable organization that we paid for those bikes with. So the money comes in. Sorry, the donation money came in, but it still shows an expenditure.
Right. Thank you, Chief. Are you okay, Mayor, if I go on with 2 more questions?
You said you had 4.
Yeah, okay, so there's 2. The third question is on what would be page 10. There's not a page number, but the date is March 26th. And the payee is Casey Bassett. I'm looking for it as I scroll. It was to grind and install quartzite flake. And there was no description in the far right column. I'm just wondering what that was all about.
I'm either going to have Kimberly address that, and if she can't address that, we'll just have to look it up and get back.
If I could make, this is Barry Blake, if I could make a comment, I would believe that that's the new floors in the bathrooms at the community center.
Great. It did come from the general fund.
Say that again, Barry.
I'd have to look at it and see what the cost and everything is, but when you talk about the description of it, that's what it sounds like. It's the work that we did in the bathrooms at the community center, the floors.
Great. And actually, I think I'll leave it at 3 tonight. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Ivy?
Just one question. Purgatory Work Crew, what do they work at for the city?
Well, they do a variety of things for us, from weeding along the interchanges to, we actually find them extremely cost effective and give them work to do. So we'd have to look up specifically what that is, but they do public works kind of care, maintenance and care projects all over town for us.
I've seen them at the county library, and I just didn't know that, but certainly support it. Thank you.
Any other questions? Councilman Staley? Your hand's still up?
I got to remember to put my hand down. I forget that.
That's okay. All right, if there are no other questions, I will entertain that motion again.
Mayor, I'd like to make that motion for item 4 A, B, and C of the consent agenda.
Second, Clough.
Second, motion and a second. I'd like a roll call vote. Start with Councilman Clough,
Clough, aye.
Staley,
Staley, aye.
Ivy,
Ivy, aye.
Coates,
Coates, aye.
Ward.
Aye.
Thank you. That's approved. Move on to item 5A, or item 5, public hearings. There is a need to table item 5A. You may or may not know, we have received a lot of public comment. I think it was over 35. And so I believe that it's working. Folks are looking online. But part of the one on the Dennett situation, some of the public comment format was canceled by mistake. And so we would like to, those that might be listening, that have made comments, we're going to keep those comments. You won't need to re-comment. And we will have them read at the next meeting. So I would like to entertain a motion that we table this public hearing for 2 weeks. So that we
Mayor,
can-
before your vote,
so that
can
we
I
offer
ask a question?
Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. So it sounded like you said that something got deleted. Can you help me understand
It
that?
got, the posting got canceled online.
Oh,
So there was,
So we
There was
wanted to
no
make sure
posting.
that
yeah, we have.
that was uncanceled at that portion. And so those folks that would have may be wanting to have a comment on that, they may have saw that it was canceled and it wasn't canceled. So we want to have everybody have the opportunity to make comment. Was that clear as mud, Doug?
yeah. It sounds like it was posted up there and people could comment in, and then some people came in and they couldn't comment because it looked like it was canceled.
Yes, yes.
It
And then
actually
so I
was-
guess
if I could, it was just actually a posting issue. So we have several agendas that get posted on one of the postings. It just showed that public hearing had been canceled. So what that would have meant
Okay.
for somebody just looking at that is they may have said, well, I wanted to comment, but I didn't. And we don't want that to happen.
Okay. So then this meeting will be reposted, noticed up for next council meeting.
Yes.
Yes, and we'll allow the public comment period to stay open.
Okay.
Councilman Clough?
I know that this is an error, and I know that I appreciate us moving this to next week. But since so many comments have been submitted, would it be appropriate to receive those comments as council members leading up into the next meeting? I would appreciate that if it's possible, or is there a restriction on that since it's technically not opened at this time and we're moving that to next week?
City manager?
I don't know. We'll look into that. How about
I know
that?
this is a snafu moment. Don't get me wrong. It's a unique scenario,
Yeah.
and with that much public feedback, that's piqued my interest a lot to just understand what's been put out there. And knowing I would have heard about it tonight, but there was just some honest mistakes that happened as we're trying to make this whole transition. So I was just wondering, in light of us knowing that there is a lot of public insight, public ideas, I technically don't mind if they're not read out right now. But if that's something that the council could have access to help us gain an insight in the meeting coming up, I was just wondering if that's a possibility.
What we're trying to decide, and we're trying to mirror our previous structure of meeting as closely as possible, which means that they would have been read into the record when they stood at the podium. And so what we're trying to avoid is releasing those before they actually become an official part of the record.
That makes
But
sense.
we can think about that and get back with you on that.
Thank you. I have no more questions.
Thank you, Councilman Ivy.
Yes, just to be clear for those residents that might be listening in, is they will be renoticed. That is correct, right?
Yes,
Okay, so there's nothing lost. It's just, we're going to do it again in 2 weeks.
right. But they don't need to unless they really want to double their effort, double their comments. They don't really need, those that have already made their comments, we have them on file, and we'll move on to the next.
Just in way of a comment, Mayor, where this has been set back 2 weeks, I'm wondering if it might be possible for us to take a public hearing, open the meeting, have our public hearing and close it and vote that night, just under this circumstance, just because it was going to possibly set people back, or
I don't have a problem with it. Any other comments on that?
and I certainly don't have an opinion. It was just a thought, just trying to take advantage of where we're all together right now, just so those people that are listening might know a little better as to what's going to happen.
So typically I'm all for it, but I think this is going to be a hot topic item. So I don't want to decide that right now. It's kind of my decision. I think if we can get into the meeting and we feel like it's a consensus and we can move forward, I'm all about it, but I wouldn't want to make that decision right now, because with 30 plus comments already, I think we're going to have some concerns in looking at it moving forward. So I don't want to address that right now personally.
All right, thank you. Councilman Club?
I think Councilman Ivy kind of was in the same boat where I was, of trying to get the best out of the information we have at now in time. And I also side with Councilman Coates to just kind of go forward and let's follow the process and the structure that we have and put this to next week, to the next meeting. Just thank you both for saying the same thing that has just been on my mind. I think we're in the right direction now.
All right, thank you. Now I'll entertain a motion if nobody else has other additional comments.
I'll make a motion that we table public hearing 5A for the consideration to approve the zone change request Z-20-02 to change from open space to PUDC planned unit development to the next council meeting, which I'm going to get the date real fast, to the April 22nd.
Second.
A motion and second. I'll entertain a roll call vote. Councilman Ward?
Aye.
Coates?
Coates, aye.
Ivy?
Aye.
Clough?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Move on to item B. Public hearing for consideration to approve a height waiver request.
Mayor, I think you need to call on Councilman Crest.
Councilman
He
Staley.
abstained.
Oh, that's right. I apologize. Councilman Staley, thank you.
Item B, public hearing for consideration to approve a height waiver request HW 20-02 for a detached pool house at a height of 28 feet 1.5 inches, located at 930 Seminole Way, Washington, Utah. Applicant Christopher Colton. I believe we go to Drew.
Yes, Mayor, can you see the exhibit on your screens now? Did you guys say yes, no?
No.
No, sir.
Okay, hold on then. How about now? Okay, good.
Yes.
Okay. The applicant, as stated, is requesting a waiver from the maximum height of buildings allowed for an accessory structure in a residentially zoned property. The address, as stated by the mayor, is 930 South Seminole Way. The maximum allowable height posted at this time for those zone properties is 20 feet. The applicant is seeking approval to extend the height of an accessory structure on his property to 24 feet and 3 inches at the max. So I'll just kind of go through. This is the building at the elevations. You can see, I'm going to try to zoom in down here on the property corner and give you an idea. It's down there in that bottom corner. That's as tight as I can get that. So let me kind of get up my pencil here. I love doing this now. It's a neat tool. So the area we're talking is down here, circled in red, is where the property exists. If you'd like, I've also got it ready. The property as it exists now. Well, let's go through the elevations and then I'll show you the aerial as we go. So I'm just going to be scrolling down. Let me clear off my red pencil and we'll back out a second. And I'll just go through. This is elevation of the bottom floor, which is the pool house area. Then you can see the stairs that actually head up to the second floor, which is an office and a workout room. This particular gentleman works from home, needs a place out of the house. For those of you who have kids, you understand what that means. And then here's all 4 elevations. I'm trying to keep them all on your screen from all the different angles there. Then these are more technical for the drawing. And so what I'd like to do, I'll stop back on these elevations. Again, the maximum height, the finished grade to the peak of the roof is 24.3. Then I'll bring up the city view. This is the property in question. I'll circle. And the particular area that he wants to put this, I'll draw that kind of roughly back in this corner here. And just kind of highlight that out. So that's the location. You see the plans. I see some of you chuckling. This is fun. I have too much fun doing this. I know. I'm sorry. The kid with a new toy. But I'll be glad to answer any questions that the council might have before you go into your public hearing. Steve, do we have the applicant on the phone? Steve says, oh, Chris is
Yes,
on
he's
the
on the
phone.
phone.
So he's available for questions. You can see the phone bridge just popped up. So I'll be glad to answer any questions, or you can just ask the applicant and then you can go into your public hearing. Thank you, Mayor.
Any questions for Drew?
Drew,
I
is
have a
the,
couple questions.
Let's go with Councilman Staley and Councilman Ivy, in order.
Is the height requested 24 feet 3 inches or 28 feet 1.5 inches? I'm seeing one thing on the agenda and another thing on staff review.
Yeah, you should have got an updated agenda. I apologize for that. It got misrepresented going out. It's the 24.3. So disregard the 28, go to the 24. Originally, he came in at 28 feet. I told him that probably wouldn't fly. He went back with his architect, got it whittled down to the 24.3. So that's the number I want you to keep in mind is 24.3 is the max.
Okay, another question for you, Drew. When I inspected the property today, I noticed that the way this particular lot sits, it sits up high, but it does give a lot of space behind with that canal trail easement. So I just wanted to make sure in particular that the 2 neighbors to the north were notified. That would be, I think, 904 South Seminole and 814 East Waukera Cove. And I'm wondering if either of those directly affected. To me, those were the only ones I could see that would have effect if there were any comments from either of those neighbors and if they were properly noticed.
They should have been. Again, I saw the labels come in. Again, this is one that just has 300 foot around. I can't remember how many were on there. I don't know if Denise can pop on if she remembers.
There was
'Cause
approximately.
again, this doesn't go to planning commission, so it would have been there. And I asked her earlier, and as I remember, she said there were no comments brought in. But Denise, it looks like you're on. Go ahead.
I am. The notices were sent out. There was approximately 25, I believe, not quite a full sheet of labels that were sent out. And at the current time, we do not have any public comments on this at all.
Thank you, Denise. Any other questions? Oh, let's see, I've got, did I say Councilman Ivy? Then we'll go with Councilman Clough and Councilman Coates.
thank you. Drew, the existing home that this proposed building will be built on, it's a 2-story home, it looks like, from the roof schematic. Is that correct?
Yeah, I don't think it's a full 2-story. It's a partial. Right in the middle, I think, is the second. So the part that's the garage you can see on the north end.
Mhm.
Let me get back my pointer here. Oh, sorry. That's not giving me what I wanted. This area is 1 story. It's where the current garage is, but I think this particular area is 2-story in the middle of the home.
That's what it
Then
looks
back
like.
to a 1-story on the south side.
So I'm assuming that the proposed building, they're 8-foot walls. Is that correct? Standard stud walls? Are they 8 or 10 feet?
Let me go over and we'll pull that up here. I'm gonna try to zoom in on this because it.
On the house or the pool house?
On the pool house, this is my question.
On the pool house, it's 9 foot on the main floor and 8 foot on the second story.
Yeah.
And it looks like the trusses are a 3.5 by 12. So that's probably where you gain some of that height back. That's about as shallow as you want to go on that.
Yeah, so 9 on the bottom, 8 on the top.
And you've got a joist. It'd be probably about a foot, wouldn't you? Yeah. Okay.
They're usually about 12 to 16 inches, depending on the spans.
Right. Okay, that's all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Clough, Coates, and then Ward.
Mr. Ellerman, if you could go back to your the last view you were at.
This one?
Yeah. I was looking at lot 205, which is near the proposed change. It looks like we've allowed similar things to be put. There we go. I don't know the name of that street, but I could see it was more to the right that you had there. If you could go down Wakara circle there, I believe. That main house there, you had lot number 205 on that. I see a similar building that's been proposed to the property lines. I know it's probably not as big, but I don't see what's existing in that neighborhood that would substantially be in a conflict to what's being proposed. I know it is a little bit higher, but I think that due to the nature of the neighborhood, this type of structure is in use and within the level of quality of life that these people currently enjoy and expect. It looks very comparable to me. And I was looking when you were moving that around, it looked like there was about 3 or 4 other buildings in a similar manner in this particular area as well.
Thank you, Councilman. How about you, Councilman Coates?
I just had a quick question for Drew. Looking at, if you want to jump back to the other, just the plan sheets on the site plan, you can scroll up to the site plan. So with the additional height, our rule is we push over 1 foot for every height they want. Isn't that correct, Drew?
Yes, what it is, the new rule that you brought in not too long ago, if they can move for every foot they go inward to the property, they get a foot higher on the accessory structure.
So with that, we didn't meet that rule, correct? That's why we're here for a height variance, because we only
Right, yeah,
moved
they
it
don't
3 feet.
have to take that. That's just what we've offered
Okay.
for people to try to keep them out of this. But if you
Okay.
go back to his, I think what's holding this one, he has a pool right there, as you can see.
Yeah, and I did see that. I just wanted to make sure that, because we went through those height things to try to make it so these people had options not to have to come to council. But looking at it, I agree with Councilman Clough, and there's a 3 foot setback. And so I think I look at this and see that it meets the intent of the neighborhood. So that's all I have.
Yeah, just so the council knows, that's what I try when people bring these in. I try everything I can to do before, and then sometimes our only options are to bring it to you good folks for these requests. So
Thank you. Thank you. Councilman Ward.
Yeah, Drew, can you just zoom out for me on there? I just want to make sure that I've been looking at the right property. Get myself oriented there.
Yeah, Sullivan Park is right over here. You can see in my screen, and then the home is down right there.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, that's okay. Thank you.
Not all, Councilman Ward?
Yep, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Ivy?
Mayor, I'm not sure if there's any more discussion or not, but if there's not, I'm ready to make a motion.
Mayor, you may want to close your public hearing technically, though.
Right, we'll need to close the public hearing first. Well, wait a minute. Does
Yeah.
anybody have
Yeah.
questions for the
Yeah.
applicant? Any questions for the applicant? Seeing that we had no buddy that had replied back on our inquiries, we could entertain a motion to close this public hearing.
Mayor, I make a motion that we close the public hearing.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Was that your intent, Councilman Ivy?
Yeah, just to make a motion when we're ready.
Okay.
When you're ready.
All right, I do have a motion and a second. We'll do a roll call vote. I'll start with Councilman Clough.
Clough, aye.
Councilman Ivy,
Ivy, aye.
Coates,
Coates, aye.
Councilman Ward,
Ward, aye.
Councilman Staley.
Aye.
Thank you all. Okay. So we'll come to you in 2 weeks.
No, Mayor.
Thanks to the applicant.
This is
This is a vote tonight.
we're
Oh, it
voting.
is? Oh, you're right. Excuse me. All right, we'll move on to item 6. Consideration to approve a height waiver requesting HW 20-02 or a detached pool house at a height of 24 foot 3 inches located at 930 Seminole Way. Applicant Christopher Cole.
And Mayor, I'm prepared to make that motion. I'd like to
So-
make a motion,
Go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion to approve a height waiver request HW-20-02 or a detached pool house at a height of 24 feet 3 inches located at 930 Seminole Way.
Clough, second.
I have a motion and a second. We'll go with a roll call vote. Councilman Staley,
Aye.
Councilman Ward,
Aye.
Councilman Coates,
Aye.
Councilman Ivy,
Aye.
Councilman Clough.
Aye.
All right, that is approved. Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Clayton. We'll move on to item 7, preliminary plat. Consideration to approve the preliminary plat for Brio phases 4C and 4D located approximately between Rialto Parkway and Gemstone Way. Applicant Reed Scott.
Hey, Mayor, let me stop for a second and go back to here and okay. Everybody see that one okay now? Is that plat shown on your screen, gentlemen?
Yes, it's getting
Yes.
clearer.
Okay. All right. Wow. The applicant, as stated, is requesting approval of the preliminary plat for the Brio 4C and D subdivisions. The applicant is proposing 35 lots and the area of coverage is 4.98 acres. The zoning designation at this particular subdivision is the Brio PCD, Planned Community Development. The surrounding zoning is open space to the north, PUD to the east, PUD and open space to the west, and PCD to the south. The proposed subdivision conforms to the approved zoning. The request meets the subdivision requirements and other city ordinances at this location. Staff's reviewed the request and recommends approval with conditions. The Planning Commission reviewed the request at their April 1st, 2020 meeting, the Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval of the preliminary plat for the Brio 4C and D subdivisions onto you, the City Council, and it is based upon the findings and subject to the conditions in your report. And I'll be glad to answer any questions the council might have on Brio 4C and D.
We do have the applicant on phone also. Any questions? Councilman Ward?
Oh, sorry. For some reason, my arm doesn't get tired in this meeting. I had to leave my hand up.
Okay. No questions for Drew or for the applicant? If not, I'll entertain a motion then.
Mayor, I'm prepared to make a motion. This is Councilman Staley.
Thank you.
I move that this council approve the preliminary plat for Brio phases 4C and 4D located at approximately between Rialto Parkway and Gemstone Way.
I have a motion. Would I have a second?
Second.
Second.
Council.
I have a motion. I believe the second was Coates, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Roll call vote. We'll start with Councilman Clough,
Clough, aye.
Councilman Ivy,
Ivy, aye.
Councilman Ward,
Aye.
Councilman Staley.
Aye.
Thank you. And Councilman Coates.
Aye.
That is approved. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Item B, consideration to approve the preliminary plat for Bedford, located approximately at 3800 South Washington Fields Road, applicant Dan and Leanne Hoops.
Wow. Everybody see that one okay on your screen? Does that fit? Okay. The applicant, as stated, is seeking approval of the preliminary plat for the Bedford subdivision. The applicant is proposing 17 lots and the area of coverage is 6.48 acres. The zoning designation at this particular subdivision is the multifamily residential R3 zoning. The surrounding zoning is Ag 20 to the north, C1 to the east, PUD to the south, and R3 to the east. The proposed subdivision conforms to the approved zoning. The request meets the subdivision requirements and other city ordinances as it relates to this location. Just to let you know, it already does have an approved CUP as well, which the R3 does require. And this proposal falls within that CUP. Staff's reviewed the request and recommends approval with conditions of the preliminary plat as outlined. The Planning Commission reviewed the request at their March 4th, 2020 meeting. The Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval of the preliminary plat for the Bedford subdivision onto you, the City Council. And of course, that's based upon the findings and subject to the conditions in your report. And they are the standard 11 conditions for preliminary plats. And I'll be glad to answer any questions the council might have on the Bedford subdivision.
Councilman Coates.
Drew, when the PUD came through the Planning Commission when I was on it, one of the items that we brought up was the property for 4200 South to the north, which I know is not a part of this project, but I thought one of the conditions for them not having a public street through their property is that property would be, the right of way would be dedicated to the city, because they did not want to make one of the streets public. So to give a little background to the other council members, my concern is that there's not a public street that gets over to the public street on to Washington Fields Road. And I did not want to happen with the subdivision to the south. It got chained off because it was a private street and they have that right to do that. But my concern is that moving forward, I thought there was a condition that that property had to be dedicated over to the city. Is that not correct, Drew?
That is correct, and I'll let Mike Shaw, if he's online, kind of pop in. That should already be in the works, if not already done with the legal description. But Mike, are you on, and can you address that?
Yes, I'm actually working with the Hoops to acquire that right away. We actually have all the legal description stuff, and I'm just finalizing the agreement with them.
Okay, that's good to hear, Mike. Question for Drew, though. Should we make that one of the conditions? Because it wasn't on the conditions list, and I thought it was already supposed to be on the conditions based on the PUD approval.
Well, they didn't actually have a PUD. It was a CUP.
Sorry, CUP.
No, and I'm not trying to split hairs. Don't take that wrong, but
No, thank you for the correction.
yeah. And so, you know, we were moving forward on that. I feel comfortable, you know, if Mike feels, because like I say, I think they've pretty much given, you know, the okay to move on that because it benefits them to do so. But maybe I'll how Mike's comfort is on that. Maybe don't want to put him on the spot, but he's the one who's been working directly with it on what his feelings are on that. Mike, do you mind?
I'm comfortable either way. If it makes council more comfortable to put a condition, that's fine. But I'm pretty confident that we've got the right of way worked out with the Hoops. I met with Dan and Leanne last week. I'm pretty confident that this is going to go through.
Okay, I'm glad to hear that, and I know the Hoops have been really workable. I just a little verbiage and some language just to protect the city, I think is worth it as far as that goes for a condition, but that's just my thoughts.
Thank you. It looks like Councilman Clough and Councilman Staley.
I'd like to voice my support to the motion made by, I just had a brain fart here. Thanks, Coates, Councilman Coates. I really appreciate, it's just verbiage to a degree, but I know there's a lot that's in motion and it is working, but out of respect of what was made in the previous meeting and the intents of this development, I think I would feel better as a council member to have that written within this motion to make sure it does go through.
So noted, thank you. Councilman Staley?
Yeah, I just wanted to have a little clarification. 4200 South is Treasure Valley Road, but I wanted to understand exactly what is in question here as far as an easement for access, and is that something they're working out with the adjacent property owner, or do they own this property as well? I would just like an update on you know, what was the condition that may have been missed and where we are now.
Yeah, I'm going to highlight here. Let me get my pencil. The question, the property is owned by the Hoops, which is your same applicant. And the piece we're talking about is right here. And that road, I'm going to change.
Drew, can you turn on the master plan road right there?
I think let me get.
I think you can. So.
I can. Let me just bring my bar up and transportation master plan. And it's the blue line. Is 4200 South is that dotted blue line. Treasure Valley Road is the orange line you can see coming in. Now, we've already acquired this particular piece from the Hancock Gibby clan. I'm gonna, well, let me get back. I'm gonna clear this out so you know where I'm talking about. There was a triangle piece left here that we got from the Hancock Gibbies. And then now this is the Hoops property here. And they're willing to give up the blue lined area that you see on your screen. Does that help?
That does help. So are we just basically asking for that easement to be in writing?
That's what I'm requesting, is that we just, and it sounds like Mike is working on that right now. What I'm requesting that is just a condition of this approval before final plat, does that be finalized?
And that's in, you know, the final plat for this is also on this agenda for tonight because the construction is essentially done. So that would be, I wonder if that's a better condition for a preliminary plat or the final plat.
Yeah, I forgot that it was.
You could do it on both. Feel free if you want to, Councilman Coates. it gives some time because they still have to get the plat. The final plat has to go through a third-party review. It's going to be a couple of weeks. If you want to make your motion on the final plat, just say before it can be recorded that we have the easement signed, if that helps you.
That
That's
does.
fine.
I think that makes sense to me.
Okay.
But I also think we should just put it on both while we're here.
Oh, it's wise. Yes, I agree.
Any other questions? Anybody ready to make a stab at a motion?
I'll make a motion, Mayor.
Okay,
I'll make a motion. We approve the preliminary plat for the Bedford located approximately 3800 South and Washington Fields Road. The applicants Dan and Leanne Hoops, with the findings and conditions provided with staff, with the additional condition number, I think 12, right, Drew?
Yes, 12.
That the roadway between Washington Fields Road and Treasure Valley Road right away be completed prior to final plat recording and deeded over to the city for the right of way.
Clough, second.
I have a motion and a second. We'll go roll call. Councilman Staley.
I know you called on me.
I know. You good?
Aye.
Okay, thanks. Councilman Coates,
Coates, aye.
Councilman Ward,
Aye.
Councilman Ivy,
Ivy, aye.
Councilman Clough.
Clough, aye.
Thank you, gentlemen. That is approved. We'll move on to item C, consideration to approve the preliminary plat for Washington Dam Industrial located approximately 1055 East Washington Dam Road, applicant Judd Palmer.
Hey, thank you, Mayor. Applicant, as stated, is requesting a preliminary plat approval for the Washington Dam Industrial. The applicant is proposing 8 lots and the area of coverage is 4.78 acres. The zoning designation at this location is the light industrial, referred to as the I-1 zoning district. The surrounding zoning is I-1 to the north, east, and south, and RA half to the west. The proposed subdivision conforms to the approved zoning. The request meets the subdivision requirements and other city ordinances as it relates at this location. Staff reviewed the request and recommends approval with conditions of this preliminary plat as outlined. The Planning Commission reviewed the request at their March 4th, 2020 meeting. The Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval of the preliminary plat for the Washington Dam Industrial Subdivision. On to you, the City Council, according and based upon the findings and subject to the conditions. And again, the standard 11 plus a 12th condition was added that they need to show the monuments, identification, and county numbers before the plat moves on to City Council. And I think that might have been done to have those numbers on there. So, but again, it's the preliminary plat. And I'll be glad to answer any questions that you might have on this proposal.
Mayor, if I may. I was wondering if staff has had any, so those are quite a few retaining walls on that east side, and I know there's a lot of elevation change on this property. I'm wondering, a couple concerns I have is it doesn't detail out the setback between the walls, and it doesn't show the drainage plan for those walls. And I know it's a preliminary plat, you don't have to get into it. I'm just more of a question maybe for the applicant, what their plan is for the drainage on those walls. And I asked staff, does that meet our current wall ordinance?
To my understanding, I do have Adam from Bush and Gudgel is on the phone with us, but I'm pretty sure Brandon has gone through, from what I understand, pretty heavily on this, but we'll let Adam address that and what his conversations have been with the Public Works Department. So Adam, can you hear us okay?
I can. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Awesome. Hey guys, I'd like to first off say we appreciate you guys taking your time to work out this online system so we can continue to move forward as a city. We sure appreciate that. And then as far as that goes, we're right now, Councilman Coates, we're currently working with Wayne Rogers over there. He's went out and he's done some preliminary investigation, and he actually probably recommends that we don't do retaining walls because it's pretty much almost solid rock out there. And he thinks that having it be a slope with some benches to account for, you know, some drainage, make sure it doesn't get too far off of there is probably what we're going to move that to.
Okay, looking at that, then my next question is, what's the plan for maintenance on those? One from the uphill side and in between the walls. I can't really tell if the storage, I know the storage units are to the east. Are those, it looks like they're pretty close to grade. I mean, you're just starting from that elevation and working down. I'm just wondering if there needs to be a bench of some sort to be able to maintain any rock foliage that could potentially happen with this being a rock shelf from the upside or downside. And then the other question I have is, if you're doing a rock shelf, are you doing a straight cliff? Or are you gonna, or I guess you said benches, but what are those benches in your mind?
So we're talking through it with Wayne, and he's going to go through and detail that out to us. He thought that we'd probably have like a 1/2 to 1 slope with some, he's going to make some recommendations on probably some like 8 foot wide or 6 foot wide benches, probably 2 of them, one towards the top and then one more towards the bottom. And then, you know, so we can they can get up in there if they need to. But they don't anticipate too much rock fall because we're trying to take it right to, you know, match their grade, come out from their property line a little bit and then start a slope down.
Well, then I would just expect you to work with Public Works on figuring that out between you, the Geotech, and Public Works.
Awesome. We appreciate it. For sure. We'll definitely work with them.
Okay, Councilman Ivey and Councilman Clough. Thank you.
Yes, the geotechnical study is pretty standard, especially on industrial build applications. I'm just wondering, this is going to require a lot of blasting from what I've seen of the project. Can you give us just kind of some insight on what's expected, what kind of the ideas of the blasting and kind of that procedure just a little bit so we have an idea? And that was for the applicant.
Oh, okay. So as of right now, I'd have to, I don't know if they're going to do too much blasting or not. I know that they had kind of talked about possibly doing that depending on how hard the rock is to move with their excavators. I don't, and they're just starting to get in there and start moving some of that dirt, or some of that rock and dirt. I don't know if you guys have noticed they're in there. So far, they haven't had too much of an issue. If they do blasting, the procedure, obviously we'll have to submit a blasting plan to Public Works and they will have to review it, and it'll definitely be directional blasting if it is, to be away from the, you know, to be away from those guys over there. But as of right now, unless things start to be harder than they are, I don't know if there is a plan to do blasting.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Ivey. Councilman Clough and Councilman Staley.
Okay, my concern on this is I know we've had some issues with gypsum in this area. Are we pretty clear that there is no issue with gypsum within the soil substrate, even though it is rock? Our area does unique things once you add water to it. What looks like rock somehow changes. So have we verified that the gypsum content has been addressed in the proposed changes with the walls and this proposed, you know, state of soils? Have we addressed the gypsum?
So as of right now, I do not have the full geotech report, and he has not mentioned any gypsum so far. He being Wayne Rogers over at AGEC. His preliminary investigations and what he told us was that it was very good good soils. It was very rocky, but obviously he's doing some corings and some things like that. And so if there'll be some substrate in there, then we'll have to deal with that at the time. But as of right now, I don't have an answer to that question. I apologize.
It's okay. I mean, gypsum may be one of many expansive soils that I'm just concerned about, because I know our roads and some of our structures have taken a beating in this area due to the presence of expansive soils that weren't properly calculated in their initial builds. So that's just one of the concerns I have, making sure that those get addressed before things get built.
Thank you. We'll work very closely to get that taken care of.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Staley. We need you to unmute.
Unmute Councilman Staley.
Thank you.
Adam, it's good to talk to you. I'm asking about access to the Snow property to the west and the Swap property to the northwest. Is that an asphalt access? Is that a dirt access? How do you envision specifically the one between lots 3 and 4?
As of right now, I'm not exactly sure. We've addressed it being there. Obviously, it'll have to be an all-weather surface. I don't know if it will be asphalt or just, they're currently, I believe, coming off on gravel. There is talks of them acquiring the parcel to the north, or to the kind of the northeast of them, and then that access in between lots 4 and 3 would go away, and they would just access off the end of the cul-de-sac. But we'll work with staff to make sure that these guys have adequate access as far as loading.
Great.
Thank you. Any other questions for Adam or for Drew? Councilman Ward.
Yeah, Drew, can you just give me the overhead? I want to just make sure I'm looking exactly at the right location here.
Hope I'm not making you too dizzy. Right where my arrow is right there. In fact, I'll hide that blue area right there is the area that we're talking about. Can you see that okay, Councilman?
Yeah. Just have you zoom back out just a little bit. Would you mind clicking on your zoning for me? Okay. Thank you.
Another question, Councilman Staley?
No, other than this is about a half mile up the street from my house, Councilman Ward. But honestly, it's nice to see something useful and productive happen with this property. And I know we vetted this zone change about industrial quite heavily, so it's nice to see a preliminary plat come in, and I'm confident they'll do a good job here.
All right, thank you. Any additional comments for Adam or for Drew? Anybody prepared to make a motion?
Yes, Mayor, I move to approve the preliminary plat for Washington Dam Industrial located at approximately 1055 East Washington Dam Road. Applicant is Jed Palmer with the 2 findings and 12 listed conditions.
Thank you. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second, Clough.
Councilman Clough, second. Okay. We'll start. I'd like a roll call vote. Councilman Staley.
Aye.
Councilman Coates.
Aye.
Councilman Ward.
Aye.
Councilman Clough.
Aye.
Councilman Ivy.
Aye.
Thank you. That is approved. Move on to item 8, resolution. Consideration to approve a participants resolution authorizing and consenting to the sale of certain electric generation facilities to the city of Hurricane and approving the form of an equipment purchase agreement, approving the form of a revised Exhibit C to the transmission service agreement between the city and Utah Associated Municipal Power Systems in connection with the Central St. George 138 kV transmission project and related matters. Director Rick Hansen.
Excuse me, Mayor and Council. Hopefully I can get this to work. Is that coming up on your screen? Can you guys see the briefing document?
Yes.
Okay. Hopefully you've had a chance to review that. Basically, there's a segment of 69 kV line that runs between two of the substations in Hurricane that is at the end of its useful life and really has no continued value in the project. And so as a PMC, we would recommend that it be surplus and sold, but the selling price is $5 to Hurricane City. If it remains in the project, we'd be exposed to future upgrade costs. So it makes sense to surplus that to the city of Hurricane. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Any questions for, looks like Councilman Coates?
Yeah, Rick, just real quick, what's the history? How come we owned a line? Is it from her in Hurricane? I'm just curious the history a little more on it. I mean, I know I read through the thing.
Yeah, the main reason was that there was a time that Twin Cities was part of UAMPS, and it made sense to have a path that UAMPS owned from the river sub all the way out to where where Twin Cities took delivery. And since that's been sold to Garcane, it no longer serves that purpose. And so it's basically just an internal line to Hurricane City.
Okay, thank you. Just curious. Thanks.
No problem.
Councilman Ivey.
Yes, Rick, I'm just wondering if Hurricane agreed to it, would they be able to come up with all the money for it?
The whole $5, I think they probably can.
The whole $5.
The lawyer said we had to have something in there.
Councilman Ward, did you have a question?
I did. Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, just curious, just for the educational purpose, can you tell me what will Hurricane do with this?
Their plan is they're going to build a transmission loop around their own city. And so they're going to be rebuilding the line. This is a picture of it. UAMPS owns just the wire and these insulators on one side. Hurricane City currently owns the poles and all the other conductors on it. So they're going to be rebuilding it to current standards and making it bigger to fit the needs of their city.
Great, thank you.
No problem.
Councilman Ivey, you still have another question?
No, he answered. As long as Hurricane get the money, we're good.
Mayor, if you're ready, I can make a motion on this.
Okay.
Oh, wow. So a resolution for 8A. Wow. Mayor, make a motion to approve the participants' resolution authorizing and consenting the sale of certain electric generation facilities to the city of Hurricane for the cost of $5 and approving the form of an equipment purchase agreement, approving the form of a revised Exhibit C, the transmission service agreement between the City of Utah Associated Municipal Power Systems in connection with the Central St. George 138 kV transmission project and related matters.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Roll call. We'll go with Councilman Ivey.
Ivy, aye.
Councilman Ward.
Aye.
Councilman Clough.
Aye.
Councilman Staley.
Aye.
Councilman Coates.
Aye.
All right, that is approved. Thank you, Rick.
Thank you.
Item 9, award of bids. Consideration to the award of bid for the Washington Parkway and Telegraph Signal Project. Mike Shaw.
Thank you, Mayor. So we advertised the project, opened bids publicly on the project. Snow Electric came in at low bid at $111,000, $648.80, and staff's asking for approval of this project.
I know there's a lot of interest in this one.
I am so excited about this, Mayor. I can't even put it into words.
Well, you better make the proposal then.
Oh, well, so there's not a whole lot of conversation on this. I think we've all gone down this and just been excited to meet the meets and bounds and figure out the cost of this. I was just kind of looking at all this, just kind of excited. There's so many people excited to put a proposal on this first and foremost. What was when I'm looking at these, we got Snow, Interstate, JP Excavating, and Cache Valley. What's the recommendation for the council?
The low one, the lowest, Snow.
Is that what we're basically limited to? Was there a benefit of using one over the other? Just trying to get that back from staff.
Snow's an excellent contractor. They've done several signal projects for us. So we're very tickled with their bid.
Well, good. Since you're tickled with that bid, if no one else has anything else to say, I'm ready to make a motion, Mayor.
I'll entertain it.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to award the bid for the Washington Parkway and Telegraph Signal Project to Snow Electrical, Inc. to the value of $111,648.80.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you, Councilman Staley. I'll entertain a roll call motion. Councilman Ward,
Aye.
Councilman Coates,
Aye.
Ivy,
Aye.
Councilman Staley,
Aye.
Councilman Clough.
Aye.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. That's approved. Thank you, Mike. Item B, consideration to award the bid for the 2020 slurry seal project.
Again, Mayor, thank you. So on March 30th, we publicly opened bids for the slurry project. Intermountain Slurry came in at our low bid at $508,097.80. So staff is asking to award to American Paving, and I didn't share my screen. There it is.
So, Mayor, if there's no discussion, I'd like to make a motion on this.
Okay, thank you.
I'd make a motion for the 2020 slurry seal project for the annual street maintenance, be installing 411,772 square yards of slurry for the amount of $508,000, $508,097.80.
I have a motion. Do I have a second? Clough with a second. Okay, roll call vote. We'll start with Councilman Clough.
Clough, aye.
Councilman Coates.
Aye.
Councilman Staley.
Aye.
Councilman Ivy.
Aye.
Councilman Ward.
Aye.
I did notice the last two bids that were approved, the last was 80 cents on each one of them. That must be the trend.
Mayor, if I could, I have my hand raised for a quick thing.
Sure, I'm sorry.
I would just like to thank Mike Shaw for the best roads in Washington County. Want him to keep up the good work. So excited to see our roads last longer. So thank you, sir. I'm so stoked for what you've done for our city and making these roads last longer than the average. So keep up the innovative work.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. Item C.
I'm going to jump in too and just remind you that
Okay.
Washington Field Road needs some work, Mr. Shaw. I brought that up about 3 months ago. It's not getting better.
Yeah, next year we're planning on Washington Fields and Washington Dam, some major, probably overlays on those roads. So some major costs involved there.
I'll just keep following up with you every 2 or 3 months until it's done, because I'll forget the timeline.
Right.
All right, item C, consideration to award the bid for the Washington Dam outfall and east lift station.
Okay, again, thank you, Mayor. On March 31st, we publicly opened bids for the sewer lift station and outfall line. On this project, we only had 2 bidders, JP Excavating and Whitaker Construction. JP Excavating came in low bid on the project at $983,000 or $983,307.50. Staff is asking council to award this to the low bid of JP Excavation.
Any comments? Questions? Anybody wants to take
Mayor,
a
I've got
step in the vote?
Mayor, I've got a question for you.
Okay, thank
Or
you.
for Mr. Shaw. So my guess is that the economy was possibly a little bit different than it is today when these bids went out, and where there's only 2 bids. Do we feel like that we got the best bids out of this, and is it even legal to put it out for rebid?
We could put it out for another bid. We were actually very excited to see the bid come in from JP Excavating, a little bit lower than we expected. We did have, I believe we had 6 or 8 plan holders on this, so we were a little bit, well, not concerned, but we thought it was a little odd that we only received the 2 bids on it. But I know contractors are still really busy right now, not wanting to do jobs. We're pretty confident that this is a good bid, so we're asking to go ahead with it.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor, if there's no further discussion, I'll entertain a motion, or I'll take a stab at a motion. You'll entertain the motion.
Thank you very much. I'll entertain that motion, Councilman.
Great.
Did you hear me?
Yeah, I'll go ahead with that.
Okay, thank you.
I'll motion that we award the bid for the Washington Dam outfall and east lift station to JP Excavation, Inc. in the amount of $983,307.50.
I'll second that, Mayor.
I have a motion and a second. I'll start roll call vote. Councilman Clough.
Clough, aye.
Councilman Coates.
I'm abstaining from this one, Mayor.
Oh, that's right. Excuse me. Councilman Ward.
Aye.
Councilman Staley.
Aye.
Councilman Ivy.
Aye.
All right, thank you. Those are approved. Thank you, Mike. Okay, we'll move on to item 10, final plat. Consideration to approve the final plat for Bedford, located at approximately 3940 South Washington Fields Road, applicant Leanne Hoops.
We can't hear you, Drew. Could you turn your mic on?
Now can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, everybody see the picture okay?
Yes.
Okay. The applicant is requesting approval of the final plat for the Bedford subdivision. This particular subdivision is proposing 17 lots and an area coverage of 6.48 acres. The zoning at this location, once again, is the multifamily residential R3 zoning designation. The preliminary plat was approved earlier tonight, just a short while ago. Staff reviewed the requested proposal and finds the proposed final plat conforms to that approved preliminary plat. In fact, the ink is still wet, and the Planning Commission reviewed the request last week at their meeting. The Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval of the final plat for the Bedford based on the findings and subject to the conditions, which are the standard 5 conditions. And again, you might want to propose a 6th condition from our preliminary plat approval of having that dedication on that commercial zone property given to the city before the recording of this final plat. So with that said, I'll be glad to answer any questions that you, the council, might have on the Bedford final plat.
Councilman Staley.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to clarify on the address here. The preliminary plat gave us an approximately 3800 South Washington Fields Road. The final plat gives us a 3940 South Washington Fields Road, but the actual plat is showing 3925 South. When I went by there today, I didn't yet see a street sign. Wondering if Public Works could get us a street sign showing 3925 South Street.
Councilman, I appreciate that. What we kind of do, that's why we'll put the location at approximately, so it's south of that 3925, but that road name would probably, I'll let Mike chime in on that if they put that up or if we do. So Mike, are you mind popping in?
That would be part of the subdivision process. They have to put up the street signing. So prior to them getting a final on that, we'll make sure that's done.
Does that help you, Councilman Staley?
Well, yes, it does. And I learned something tonight. Maybe we'll have 6 conditions then.
Okay.
A street sign at 3925 South.
Well, it's an automatic before we let them get a signature on the plat. That's what that final Mike was talking about, is that the Public Works make sure that sign will be in. And even on
That'll
these
be
private
great.
streets, on the private streets, they'll have to have signs on them as well.
You know,
before they'll
we
sign
joke,
off.
you know, I joke about that a little bit, and I understand approximately, but I really appreciate that because you've got Freedom Village there, adjacent to it, and Mustang Townhomes North. So even from a public safety standpoint, to be able to give an address that we're off 3925 South in Washington Fields Road, that's really helpful.
That's a good point. Very well taken. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Staley. Anybody else? Any additional questions? I'll entertain a motion then.
Mayor, I'll make a motion. We approve the final plat for the Bedford subdivision located at approximately 3940 South and Washington Fields Road with the findings and conditions provided by staff, with the additional 6th condition of the roadway easement for future 4200 South be dedicated prior to recording of the final plat.
Clef, second.
I have a motion and a second. We'll go to roll call vote. Councilman Staley,
Aye.
Ivy,
Aye.
Coates,
Aye.
Clough,
Aye.
Ward.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Move on to item 11, ordinance. Consideration to approve an ordinance amending the general plan, G2002, requesting to change the land use designation from community commercial, CCOM, to planned unit development residential, PDR. The property is located at the northeast corner of 1100 East and Telegraph Street. The applicant Red Vista Development of Orem, LLC.
Well, Mayor and Council, I do apologize. I'm not sure why the exhibit, and I thought I'd checked, did not come through, but you know the property well. I just highlighted on there with the red pen as the aerial. This is the area in question. Again, the 2 weeks has since passed for your holdover time. In fact, it's doubled that because of our missing of our last meeting. And so this item is ready for council action. I'll be glad to answer any questions that you might have had in your 4 weeks to ponder this proposed general plan amendment to the PUD from the community commercial.
So Mayor, if I may,
Yes.
a couple of the questions that I needed some help refreshing my memory on is, Drew, when we looked at this, we talked about making it just a PUD and not a PUD residential or PUD commercial as far as this general plan amendment. A couple of my thoughts is I still would like to see, I was thinking a lot after we heard from the applicant about that this type of application for affordable housing probably does meet to go in commercial areas. And it kind of makes sense the more I think about it. The concern I have was I don't think we got into the amount of parking and that kind of stuff, but that is one concern I have is the current parking on it with the layout. I don't know if it met it or not. I don't remember those numbers. And I know that's farther ahead in our process, but those are the couple concerns I had moving that forward was the current parking layout moving forward. But I am in support of a PUD itself. That way in long term, if it does change hands, it can't just go to residential. I think it needs to be a PUD in general.
I appreciate that. And I know that helps, I think, a few other council members that I've had a chance to talk to that would have been my recommendation, just to give it the PUD. And then whatever happens, they can come back for either commercial or residential, but it'll be through a PUD is what the council wants to see anyway. So that might be a great help. In fact, it might give you more flexibility than what the community commercial has right now, in one vein to think about that. So appreciate that thought.
Sure. Thank you. Elder, Councilman Clough, Councilman Staley, Councilman Ivy, from that order.
Thank you, Mayor. One of my biggest concerns about this I want to discuss with the council is I am perfectly fine discussing a change in zonation. The developers proposed something unique in the concept of a monetary exchange that is being considered as a way of compensating from changing it from one type of zonation to another. And though that may be of value to our city, my feel is our precedent as a council is to establish zones and once that zone has been approved and talked about as a council, that we're good with that. I get nervous when we start talking about exchanging of monetary value within zone changes. One, because I don't think that's our role. And two, I don't think it sets a good precedent of appearance as our council. If this feels like a right thing to go with PUD, let's go with PUD. But I'm not in favor of having an exchange, a monetary exchange, to change it from one type of zoning to another.
Thank you. Councilman Ivy.
Thank you, Mayor. My concern from the start was that because of the number of children that could possibly be in this complex, that there would be plenty for them to do, because we know Telegraph will be busy and it's only going to be busier. And so I just wanted to voice that I am in support of a PUD for this development, and I will be looking for those amenities that will keep those youngsters safe and occupied. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Staley, you had your hand out. Did you?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. And I appreciate what Councilman Clough brought up. What he's referring to is the transfer fee that the applicant had initially brought up, that did come up briefly in our last public meeting during the public hearing. I think it was pretty clear that the council does not have an appetite for a transfer fee. One thing that I did like, because as we trade off a little bit of commercial for potentially attainable affordable housing, I did like the trust deed restrictions. And Drew, are we at that phase yet, or is that the next phase that we would ask for trust deed restrictions to help these be owner occupied affordable housing?
That would be at your zone change on your PUD.
Okay.
The actual zone change, because that'll go into a development agreement. But right now we're just talking general plan. So yeah,
right.
It would be the next phase that you would iron out all the parking, all the stuff that was brought up earlier, the play area, amenities.
Perfect.
All that open space and stuff would be part of your PUD, what they would propose. But it's good you get it out now for them to have it in the back of their mind as part of their proposal when they bring it forward. And counsel, the applicant is on the phone if in case you have any questions for them. I saw here they are ready if you do have any questions for them.
Mayor, I'm prepared to make a motion if there are no more questions.
Any other questions? Any other questions for the applicant? Okay, I will entertain that motion.
I move that we approve an ordinance amending the general plan G-20-02, requesting to change the land use designation from community commercial to planned unit development, period. The property is located on the northeast corner of 1100 East and Telegraph Street.
I'll second that, Mayor.
I have a motion and a second. It will be a roll call vote. I'll go with Councilman Clough.
Clough, nay.
Ivy,
Ivy, aye.
Staley,
Aye.
Coates,
Aye.
Ward.
Aye.
Okay, that passes 4-1. Thank you. Item 12, funding, review the Greater Together Fund. As you all know, we approved money to go to this Greater Together Fund. They've asked me to be on the review board to review the applications. So far, we've approved 3. One of them was here in Washington. It was Black Bear Diner. And there are currently 40 plus applications going on right now. It's been a little overwhelming, just to be frank, to Dawn and the chamber. And so we've been quite patient in waiting for the other packets for us to see. But there's been great interest. And I think that hopefully it will accomplish what we're looking to do. Should you have any questions on this? The 3 that we approved, they didn't, we said they could get up to 20,000. The only one that applied for the full 20,000 was Black Bear, and I understand that for their employees. The others were, one was 10 and the other one was like 11. It was like 11,200. It was, so the good thing is, gentlemen, I think we did a good thing to help these folks get out. I do know there's at least 7 to 10 Washington businesses that have applied, that have told me that they were applying. So looking forward to that. And that's really the only update I have. Like I said, that we're a little overwhelmed for the number of applications. So Councilman Clough and then Coates.
I think one of the biggest things, Mayor, thank you for giving us some data back on that. I was really excited for this update to see how our community was responding. I feel overwhelmed and happy that good things are happening. At this point, do you feel confident that we started with $50,000, waiting for this meeting to see how it would react, how the board would be set up, how the response would be? Do you feel it wise to move forward with our full potential of what we wanted to do as a council and move up to the 85,000 and give the rest of that at this time, or would you rather wait and see how more applications come in?
I'd like, if you want my honest opinion, I think we ought to hold off for the next 2 more weeks. See, I want to see the full, what's coming in through Washington. And not that I'm trying to be greedy, but I want to see how our response is from our businesses here in Washington City. That's my recommendation, council. It's up to you to decide. Either way, I think we will probably end up funding the full amount, but I think we need to get a little more traction.
Then if that's the case, Mayor, would you be okay putting this on our next agenda when we meet together, just to have another follow-up and see how we're going at that time then?
Did you hear that, Denise? We'll get it on.
Sorry, a little slow unmuting. Yes, I got it.
Okay.
2 weeks.
I just feel this is something that's so pressing to me, just to make sure our economy the best that we can influence. There's so many ways that this gets influenced. And if we're going to step in and do it, I just want to make sure we're there for our businesses in a responsible way. And if we can give a little bit, that would make a big difference between someone closing their doors and keeping them open. I'm so sensitive to that right now. And I just want to see how we can continue to be a benefit in a very responsible way.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Coates, you still want to?
No, Councilman Clough asked it, so I'm good.
Okay. Anybody else? I do want to tell you, thank you so much, gentlemen, for approving that. It's a good thing. It's a really good thing. And like Councilman Ward said during our discussion, we probably won't see that money back, but it's going to be money well spent. Anything to report from your assigned committees?
Mayor, I will jump in.
Okay.
Just want to mention again that the league has come out with a list of impacts for stimulus fund considerations for municipalities. Have a list of those. And then just for your information, there is in planning right now an emergency legislative session planned for sometime next week. The video chat that I was involved with, and Mayor, you probably were there to also. Lieutenant Governor Cox discussed a little bit about the planning of that, but the legislative session is to address COVID-19. And what I'm hearing is it's not just our actions that we're taking, but also to address long-term economic impacts and try to, the big press that I hear is that they're just, it's desperate that they keep these businesses doors open so that the furloughed workers have a job to go back to. And that seems to be a major concern. But if you would ever like to know more, Councilman, please reach out. I know there's a myriad of information out there, but I'm involved in those video conferences. And if there's ever a question I can help with, please reach out. Thank you, Mayor. That's all I have.
Thank you, Councilman. Anybody else? Councilman Staley?
Thank you, Mayor. I had the chance to attend the Planning Commission meeting as part of the audience, more so than as part of the, part of the action like we are having tonight. And one thing that I was very impressed with is the fact that there too, we had public comment come electronically. And I know we had an item tonight that was to be discussed, and we had many comments that came in electronically. So I may be stretching a little bit from my assignment on Planning Commission, but I think that's a discussion worth having as to what extent this council continues to allow electronic public comment. I think of a mother who's concerned about or has questions about a development, but while she's or he or whoever it may be is home attending to their responsibilities, not able to break away and spend the whole evening waiting for one agenda item to come up to put their comment in. So I just feel like as our lives are kind of changing and we're using and embracing technology more so, I would be a proponent that we follow the successful pattern that the Planning Commission had, accepting electronic public comment as we see how it goes in future meetings here while we're meeting remotely. So that was one comment. The other comment has to do with my involvement on the Active Transportation Committee. I look forward to bike lanes on Merrill Road and on the other Main Street and Parkway projects. I look forward to maintenance on Washington Fields Road in anticipation of more improvements, and would like to see bike lanes and active transportation lanes there as well. So if that can be part of the minutes for staff who's listening there. That's all I have on my assignments.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? Okay, we'll move on to our city manager report.
Thank you, Mayor. And I won't take too much time. I've submitted kind of a written report just to kind of facilitate this setting. But the other interesting thing about this written report is so many of the items were covered tonight, from the traffic signal to Main Street to other things this evening. And so, but I did want to mention just a comment with regards to what Councilman Staley had mentioned. Then we're very impressed this evening, and had it not been just for the missed posting, I think you would have been too. We were very impressed this evening with the turnout of the public comment, and we've recognized, I think, through this process that in some cases, government hasn't kind of met the people halfway in helping them to be a part of these government processes. And I couldn't agree more on that issue about there's going to be some wonderful things that'll come out of this that I think will help our citizens engage in a much better way with the process. And so we're going to continue to explore those, but I agree with that. I won't go through this unless the council wants me to. Again, you have it, and but I would also entertain any questions that might be there. You'll have to unmute, Mayor.
All right. Round one of the electronic era for Washington City is going to be adjourned as soon as I ask for an adjournment.
So moved.
All in
Second.
favor?
Aye.
Hey.
All right. See you all, gentlemen. Thank you so much for your patience and your who you are. Great people. Thanks.
Thank
We're
you.
the Brady Bunch.
Thank you,
it
Mayor.
seems like tonight.
Good night.
Brady Bunch. I get to be Marcia.
Good night, gentlemen.
Good night, John Boy.